Hey guys, tonight we're opening a door that doesn't creak. It groans, warped by pressure, miles below the surface. You're not walking into a room this time. You're sinking. Slowly. The blue above you fades into black. You pass through layers colder than ice, heavier than stone. And still, you keep sinking. Down here, sunlight isn't just absent, it's irrelevant. Pressure builds with every inch enough to fold steel like paper. Your breath fogs the visor, though, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive this. But that's fine. Tonight, you're just a guest. A place this alien doesn't need to be off-world. It's already under ours. Here, ancient ruins rest where no cities should be. Creatures blink with lights that aren't for seeing. Sounds echo across miles of water with no visible source. And still, science has no answers. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You descend past the reach of ships and satellites. Past the reach of ships and satellites beyond where GPS can follow and sonar starts to guess. It gets quieter here, not because there's nothing to hear, but because the ocean is built for secrecy. Pressure stifles sound. Darkness swallows color. Down here, even the currents move like they're holding their breath. And then you see it. It's not glowing. It's not moving. It just is. A disc-shaped shadow resting gently on the Baltic Sea floor, roughly 300 feet below the water's surface. You circle around it slowly, trying to make sense of the angles. It looks like something that shouldn't be here, smooth, symmetrical, and almost too intentional. This is the Baltic Sea Anomaly. Found in 2011 by a Swedish diving team that was ironically looking for old liquor from sunken World War I ships. They found this instead, a massive circular formation nearly 70 meters wide, shaped eerily like a crashed spacecraft. You know the kind of thing people swear they saw in the woods during the 80s. Only this one is real. And stone. Maybe. Its surface is strange, scorched in places, unusually textured in others. Divers reported electronic malfunctions just by approaching it. Cameras cut out. Lights refused to stay on. The closer they got, the more their equipment rebelled. And then, just as suddenly, everything would return to normal as they backed away. Coincidence? Maybe. But strange things often gather in threes. The first oddity is the shape. Not jagged like you'd expect from glacial erosion, but curved with what looks like a central dome and a ramp-like structure leading up one side. Below it, the seafloor seems disturbed, as if the object had once moved or landed there with force. The second is the composition. Divers describe the surface as being unlike any known rock in the area. Some said it felt more metallic than stone. In one corner, they found a perfect circular hole that appeared to descend straight into the structure. You'd love to peek inside, but so far no one's really made it that far. And the third, the theory that refuses to die, that this isn't a geological fluke, but a technological remnant, a ship, an artifact, or the ruins of something older than civilization itself. Scientists naturally have offered more grounded explanations. Some say it's just a glacial deposit left behind when ancient sheets of ice plowed across northern Europe thousands of years ago. Others suggest it's an outcropping of volcanic basalt eroded by water over millennia. But then, why does it look like something that crash-landed? Why the strange symmetry? Why the equipment malfunctions? And why does it look so suspiciously like the Millennium Falcon? Yes, people have said that. A lot of people, actually. Fringe theorists took one look at the sonar image and said, "That's no rock, that's a Star Wars set piece." Which, let's be fair, says more about our collective cultural memory than anything else, but also kind of makes you wonder, is this just another case of pareidolia? our brains seeing patterns where there are none? Or is there something deeper being triggered when we see a disk, a dome, a ramp? There's a theory, and I'm not saying it's right, but it's compelling that some architectural shapes are imprinted on human consciousness. That circles, pyramids, ziggurats, they resonate because they were part of our ancestral environment in ways we've forgotten. Some even think they were inherited from civilizations that predate history, wiped out in ancient floods or cataclysms. Atlantis, Doggerland, Mu. Maybe the Baltic Sea Anomaly is just a rock. But maybe it's a piece of one of those stories we've half remembered through myth and legend. Even now, no large-scale scientific expedition has returned to the site. Funding has dried up. Diving conditions in the Baltic are notoriously dangerous, cold, dark, with fast-shifting currents, and visibility so poor you'd have better luck filming in soup. But there are also whispers, of course, that certain people don't want more eyes on the object, that keeping it mysterious serves someone's purpose. Or maybe we just don't want the answer, because once you classify something, it becomes ordinary, and the deep sea doesn't feel like a place built for ordinary. Imagine for a moment that it is artificial, that something fell or was buried beneath the Baltic Sea thousands of years ago. A ship, a beacon, a fragment of something else entirely. If that were true, what else might be down here? What other shadows are hidden under miles of salt and silence? You rise slowly now, leaving the anomaly behind. It grows smaller beneath you until it vanishes entirely, absorbed once more into the murk. Maybe you imagined it. Maybe someone planted the story for clout. Or maybe there really is a piece of forgotten history, resting quietly in the dark, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to dig deeper. But the sea doesn't give up its secrets easily. And as you drift away, you realize something else: you're not alone down here. Something just shifted in the water behind you. You turn slowly. But there's nothing there, just the same slow billow of sediment, the same black silence. Still, something in the water feels different now, like the temperature dropped half a degree, or the current pulled ever so slightly to the left. You try not to think about it too hard. Down here, your own heartbeat can sound like an intruder, but we're not done exploring. Thousands of miles away, under the warm blue waters off the coast of Japan's Ryukyu Islands, lies a structure that refuses to be explained. It's not the product of sonar scans or blurry photos. It's visible to the naked eye, carved into the seafloor like a forgotten monument. Divers call it the Yonaguni Monument. The water here is clearer, lighter, but the mystery is no less heavy. In 1986, a local diver was scanning the ocean floor for hammerhead sharks when he stumbled across something else entirely: a series of massive stone terraces, clean lines, flat surfaces, and right-angled edges that didn't look natural at all. At first glance, it looked like a sunken ziggurat or a stepped pyramid, and not a crumbling one either. This thing looked intentional. You hover above it now, watching as the structure unfolds beneath you like a lost city swallowed by the sea. Giant platforms layer over one another in perfect sequences. Narrow paths stretch out from central plazas. There's even what looks like a set of ceremonial stairs, and beyond that, a trench so sharply cut it feels surgical. Geologists, of course, have their opinions. Some argue this is the result of natural tectonic fracturing. Yonaguni does sit on the Ring of Fire after all. Earthquakes, underwater landslides, shifting plates, they can split sandstone into neat geometric shapes. Over time, erosion might smooth the edges further. That's the safe explanation. Clean, predictable, scientific. But let's be honest, it doesn't feel like a coincidence when you're looking right at it. Especially not when some divers claim to have seen symbolic carvings or even passage-like hollows beneath the main terrace. One marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, has spent years diving the site. He believes the monument could be over 10,000 years old, older than the Egyptian pyramids, older than the Sumerians, even older than agriculture. According to Kimura, This may have once been part of a coastal city built during a time when sea levels were drastically lower. Back then, large parts of Asia's coastline extended much farther out. A rising sea could easily have drowned a settlement like this, especially if it were struck by earthquakes or tsunamis at the same time. Historians still argue whether there was any such civilization in Japan at that time, or if we're projecting ancient grandeur onto random rock. But if Kimura's right, Yonaguni wouldn't just rewrite Japanese history, it would challenge the very timeline of human civilization. The formation itself is enormous, over 150 meters long and 40 meters wide, and the precision of the angles is haunting. Some stones are so cleanly separated they look like they were cut with giant blades. Others appear stacked with overhangs and ledges that suggest design, not accident. What's strange is what's missing. No pottery, no tools, no bones. If this was a city, it left no trace of its citizens. But that's not entirely surprising. If a culture existed that long ago, everything biodegradable would have vanished. The sea would have scoured it all away, leaving only the foundation. And this is the wild part, that foundation may still be standing. You glide lower, tracing a hand along the edge of a staircase that leads nowhere. It doesn't feel like the work of erosion. It feels crafted, intentional. Which brings us to the question no one can quite answer: who built this? Some connect it to the lost continent of Mu, the Pacific Ocean's answer to Atlantis. Others suggest an advanced pre-Jomon culture, perhaps seafarers who built stone temples along their coastlines long before recorded history began. Mainstream historians roll their eyes, of course. There's no direct evidence, no writing, no artifacts. And yet, the monument remains. There's a moment when you round one corner and look up through a broken arch, and for just a second, it feels like something is watching you. Not malevolently, just patiently. Like the ruins themselves are waiting for someone to finally remember. And maybe they are. Maybe Yonaguni is a reminder, a fragment of a time we forgot. Or maybe it's just a beautiful accident, a stone trick of the sea. Either way, it pulls you in. The ocean isn't kind to certainty. That's the problem. Or the beauty, depending on your perspective. You rise slowly, kicking gently through the water, the monument growing smaller beneath you. Its shapes become less defined as the currents blur them into shadows. You look back once more before it disappears from view entirely. Even now, you're not sure what you saw, but the sea remembers. It always does. And somewhere else beyond coral reefs and whale song, a different mystery waits, one that glows not from stone or structure, but from the ocean itself. You drift toward warmer currents now. The light returns just a little. Enough to see your hands in front of your face, to catch the flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye. But the water is still deep, still heavy. And then something changes. The ocean starts to glow, not in flashes like a jellyfish or from the occasional bioluminescent flicker. No, this is different. It starts at the edges of your vision, a pale bluish haze, like the afterglow of a fading dream. Then it spreads. The sea around you begins to shimmer softly and steadily, like moonlight filtered through mist. But there's no moon here, no surface, no sky, only water and light. Welcome to the Milky Sea Effect, a rare and haunting phenomenon that turns entire swaths of the ocean into a glowing, luminous expanse. Sailors have described it as sailing through a sea of stars. Others have said it was so bright they could read by it. It sounds like fantasy, but it's real, and it's enormous. In 2005, scientists using satellite imagery detected a glowing patch of water off the coast of Somalia. It measured over 15,000 square kilometers, about the size of Connecticut. The glow lasted several nights. A nearby ship confirmed the eerie event. The ocean had turned into liquid light. But how? The leading theory involves a type of bioluminescent bacteria called Vibrio harveyi. Unlike the flashy strobe light flickers of dinoflagellates, the kind you might see lighting up the wakes of boats. Vibrio bacteria emit a continuous cool glow. When the conditions are right, calm seas, warm temperatures, nutrient-rich waters, they can form massive colonies. Once their population reaches a critical mass, they begin to glow together. It's called quorum sensing, a kind of bacterial groupthink. Sounds simple, right? But here's the twist. No one has ever successfully captured a live Milky Sea sample while it's happening. Not once. Despite all our satellite sonar arrays and oceanographic vessels, we still rely on luck on some ship passing through the right spot at the right time, with someone aboard who has the sense to say, "Wait, is the ocean supposed to be doing that?" Historians still argue whether early accounts were accurate or embellished. In 1849, the crew of the SS Lima wrote that they'd sailed through glowing seas that stretched as far as the eye could see. Some modern scientists once dismissed it as nautical folklore until the 2005 confirmation forced a rethink. And that rethink raises new questions. Because while bacterial light is the most accepted explanation, it doesn't cover everything. Some sailors have described the glow as eerily uniform. No specks, no particles, just smooth light, like a pool of spilled milk. Others say it pulses almost like it's breathing. A few even claim the texture of the water changes thicker, slicker, like moving through syrup, which raises the question, could something else be going on? Fringe theories suggest everything from geothermal activity to underwater electromagnetic fields. Some believe it's the ocean's way of releasing built-up energy, like a pressure valve glowing as it vents. Others propose an even stranger idea, that it could be the bioluminescent output of organisms we haven't even discovered yet. Imagine jellyfish the size of cities, or massive colonies of planktonic life forms drifting like translucent continents just below the surface. Sounds like science fiction, maybe. But again, no one's ever caught it. And then there's the bigger question: how many times has this happened without anyone noticing? The oceans are vast, and the Milky Sea Effect only shows itself at night. In pre-satellite days, most ships didn't have the time or inclination to report weird glows on the water. And even now, with all our tech, we still miss them. The 2005 event was only discovered because someone happened to be scanning old satellite data and thought, that looks off. It's possible these glowing oceans have occurred hundreds, maybe thousands of times unrecorded, unseen, known only to whales and waves. There's something quietly unsettling about that. The idea that the ocean is performing this gentle miracle over and over and we just don't see it. Or maybe we're not supposed to. Some researchers are trying to change that. There are proposals now to equip ships with autonomous sampling systems, ones that could detect and preserve bioluminescent events on the fly. If that happens, we might finally get our answers. But for now, all we have are glimpses. You glide through the glow like a ghost, your body outlined in silver blue. The light isn't bright enough to blind it, just surrounds you, hums against your skin like static. There's no sound, but somehow it feels like the sea is singing in a language you can't quite hear. And then, it fades. No warning, no goodbye. One moment you're drifting through an otherworldly dream, and the next, it's gone. The glow collapses like fog under the sun, and you're back in the dark. You wonder if it really happened, if the ocean just showed you something it didn't mean to. Or maybe it did mean to just this once. But the sea doesn't explain itself, it just pulls you deeper. And now, beneath that calm surface, we descend again. Not toward light, but toward pressure. Toward a place so deep, so crushed by gravity, that only 3 people have ever seen it with their own eyes. Deeper than Everest is tall. A world where metal folds, time slows, and even sound goes quiet. It's time to visit the bottom of the world. You start to fall again. Not quickly, no, nothing down here happens quickly, but steadily through a darkness that no light has ever pierced. The pressure builds with every meter, not like a weight on your chest, but like the entire ocean trying to whisper into your bones. You don't feel fear yet. Not exactly. But the silence has begun to sound personal. This is the path to the Challenger Deep, the single deepest known point in Earth's oceans, buried inside the Mariana Trench, just east of the Mariana Islands. If Mount Everest were dropped into this trench, its peak would still be over a mile underwater. Most people think the bottom of the ocean is like a flat desert. It isn't. Not here. The Mariana Trench is more like a wound in the planet, an enormous scar where two tectonic plates collide. The Pacific Plate is being shoved beneath the Mariana Plate in a process known as subduction. The result, a narrow crescent-shaped trench over 1,500 miles long, plunging nearly 11,000 meters deep. That's almost 7 miles straight down. And down here the physics start to feel wrong. At this depth, the pressure is over 1,000 times what it is at sea level, more than 16,000 pounds per square inch. It's enough to crush a human body flat in seconds. Even most submarines can't handle it. The few that do are special sealed titanium spheres with walls over 5 inches thick, designed less like vessels and more like time capsules. Only 3 human beings have ever reached Challenger Deep: Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh in 1960 aboard the Trieste, and James Cameron in 2012 in his custom-built sub, the Deep Sea Challenger. Each of them described it the same way: flat, silt-covered, eerily still. But not lifeless. That's the part that shocked scientists the most. Everyone assumed nothing could live down here, not without sunlight, not with that pressure. And yet, there were signs of movement. Tiny amphipods, mysterious gelatinous shapes that flickered just beyond the lights. In some cases, even what looked like fish, though that remains debated. Historians still argue whether the first fish Piccard and Walsh reported seeing was real, or an illusion, a trick of pressure fatigue or hope. But the fact that anything was moving at all down here was enough to rewrite the rules. Later missions revealed even more single-celled organisms the size of marbles called xenophytophores thriving in the muck. Microbial colonies that feast not on light or sugar, but on chemistry extracting energy from the hydrogen, carbon, and sulfur compounds bubbling up from the Earth's crust. Life, it turns out, is annoyingly stubborn, and the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. There's a hypothesis still fringe, but growing, that entire ecosystems might exist in the Hadal zones of Earth's trenches, completely cut off from the surface world. These ecosystems wouldn't just be weird, they might be radically different. Different DNA, different cellular structures, even different timescales. Some scientists wonder if life could evolve at a rate we wouldn't recognize, either too fast or too slow for our instruments to detect. And that's just the biology. Geologically, Challenger Deep is a playground for weirdness. The incredible pressure causes unusual chemical reactions in the rock. Some theorize that under the trench's floor pockets of superheated liquid or even natural nuclear reactions might be occurring. The kind of thing that could fuel, well, something. There are sonar anomalies too. Shapes that suggest symmetry. Flat plains broken by towering spires. Once, an unmanned probe sent to survey part of the trench returned corrupted data interrupted by what the team described only as unexpected interference. They blamed equipment failure. Maybe? But it's hard not to wonder, especially when old naval records occasionally leak, revealing strange sounds, long, low pulses, or sudden roars from this part of the Pacific. Not just once, repeatedly. Always from the deep. Some call them tectonic groans. Others think they're just submarine noise. But there are those who believe something older might be hiding here, something massive, slow-moving, and perfectly comfortable in total darkness. Of course, that's speculation. Romantic, terrifying speculation. But in a trench where 97% of the floor remains unexplored, speculation is kind of all we have. And then there's the weirdest part of all. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the floor of the Mariana Trench. Let that sink in. We've sent rovers to other planets, landed probes on comets, and photographed galaxies billions of light years away. But the deepest place on our own planet, still mostly a mystery. It's humbling, or horrifying, or both. You drift lower now, past the point where your instincts say this is fine, into the realm where your brain starts inventing reasons to go back. The water around you feels heavier. The light from your suit dims slightly, not because the battery's dying, but because the water is absorbing everything, even the idea of color. You imagine reaching the bottom and stepping out onto that fine, dusty silt. Would it feel like the moon, like the ruins of something forgotten? Or would it feel watched? Some theorists, again, the fringe variety, suggest that ancient ruins could exist down here, that tens of thousands of years ago, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower, entire civilizations might have lived along what is now the ocean floor, and that some of their structures built of stone or other enduring materials might still be hidden beneath the layers of silt and time. You don't see any temples, not yet. But a shadow passes to your left, and when you turn, there's nothing there. Just the dark. It's probably nothing. Probably. You hover in silence for a moment. Then slowly, you begin to rise. The ascent takes a long time. Your body adjusts to the shift in pressure. But your mind, it stays behind for a while. It lingers on the floor of the world, where secrets press upward like bubbles in stone waiting. What else might be down here? What other voices might still be echoing across the trench too deep for us to hear? You may never know, but the trench does, and it's not done speaking yet. As you ascend from the trench, something shifts, not just in depth, but in mood. You've seen darkness, you've felt pressure. But now you're entering a space where the sea plays tricks with perception. Shapes bend, currents spiral strangely, and just ahead, you notice something shimmering, not glowing exactly, but shining in a way that's wrong, like heat waves underwater. You're approaching an underwater brine pool, one of the strangest natural features on the planet. A lake beneath the sea. A place where water sits atop different water. The rules you thought you understood are starting to unravel again. From a distance, it looks like a mirror resting at the bottom of the ocean, a perfect stillness outlined by shimmering waves and a glistening shoreline. But get too close, and you'll feel it, a barrier almost physical separating two worlds. The upper ocean is just normal seawater. But beneath that's brine hypersaline water, 8 times saltier than the sea above it. It's so dense that it doesn't mix. It just sits there, silent, separate, and dangerous. The most famous of these formations lies in the Gulf of Mexico, and it has a name worthy of myth, the Jacuzzi of Despair. You'd laugh if it weren't so fitting. This particular pool lies over 300 feet down. It's ringed by smooth stones and encrusted with salt deposits that shine under the ROV lights like crystals. The edges are littered with the remains of unfortunate sea creatures, crabs, shrimpfish, curled up like offerings frozen in place where they sank. Because here's the thing about brine pools, they are deadly. Anything that strays too far inside anything not adapted to the lack of oxygen, the presence of hydrogen sulfide, and the sheer salt content dies quickly, and then just doesn't decay. Historians still argue whether the brine pool environment resembles conditions on early Earth or something else entirely. But one thing's clear, this isn't just water. It's a boundary, a chemical, physical, and perhaps even biological threshold. And yet life exists here, not the kind you're used to, not fish or coral, but extremophiles, organisms that thrive in conditions that would kill just about everything else. Bacteria and archaea that feed not on light, but on sulfur and methane. Entire microbial ecosystems clinging to the pool's edge, forming soft mats that ripple in the current like a bizarre undersea lawn. Some of these organisms are thought to metabolize heavy metals. Others seem to glow faintly when disturbed, as if issuing a warning. And at the heart of it all, nestled in the smooth salt rim, strange tube worms and clams live symbiotically with chemosynthetic microbes. They draw nourishment not from plants or prey, but from raw chemistry. You reach the edge of the pool now, and you hover there, suspended in a place that looks both alien and sacred. It's like staring into a liquid altar, something alive yet completely indifferent to your presence. You're struck by a quiet question. Why are these pools so perfectly shaped? Some are almost circular. Others have ridges or depressions that look almost architectural. It's probably geological, But in certain satellite images, clusters of brine pools seem to form in repeating patterns. Some researchers have even described grid-like formations, though these claims rarely make it into published journals. You're not sure what to make of that. Patterns are funny things. People see meaning where none exists, but sometimes they miss the meaning that is there. A few fringe theorists, and let's be generous here, believe these pools could be natural containment zones. That deep beneath them lie hidden chambers filled with prehistoric materials, gases, or even dormant life forms sealed off from the rest of the ocean for millions of years. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not impossible. After all, the deep Earth has cave systems and subterranean lakes we've only just begun to understand. Why not the sea? What if the brine pools are like windows, or worse, locks? In 2016, during a deep-sea dive, researchers noted that the jacuzzi of despair appeared to pulse. Not literally, of course, but the water shimmered in a rhythmic pattern, almost like it was breathing. When they returned a year later, the structure around the pool had shifted slightly. The salt formations had changed. Something down there was active, alive maybe, or just geological. Maybe. No one's gone back since. And maybe that's because the deeper you go, the more you realize that some places aren't just hard to reach, they're hard to interpret. The rules start to break down. Light doesn't behave the way it should. Matter behaves strangely, and your own instincts start to betray you. You remember the first time you looked into a swimming pool as a child, how the bottom seemed closer than it was, how the shapes bent in odd ways. This is like that, only worse. The brine shifts your sense of depth. The pool stretches infinitely in one moment, then appears shallow the next. It's like trying to look into a dream, or a memory, and then something stirs, not in the pool itself, above it. A faint movement too fluid to be a fish, too smooth to be a current. You blink, and it's gone. Whatever it was, it stayed above the brine. That's smart. You back away, slowly watching the surface of the pool return to perfect stillness, like it never noticed you, or chose not to. As you drift away, you can't shake the feeling that the ocean just showed you a secret, and then changed the subject. And the next subject, well, it's louder, much louder, because while the brine pools remain silent, the sea has other places where it screams, not with mouths, but with stone and fire. Volcanic fire. You're heading toward a place where the earth itself exhales, and not gently. The darkness breaks before you hear it. A low rumble, more like a tremor than a sound, pulses through the water around you. It vibrates through your chest plate, soft at first, like distant thunder under 1,000 blankets, but quickly grows sharper, more deliberate. A faint orange glow begins to seep into the gloom ahead, illuminating something that shouldn't be possible this deep, a mountain rising from the ocean floor. Welcome to the realm of mysterious undersea volcanoes, a network of fire hidden beneath thousands of meters of freezing water where the earth still breathes molten stone into the void. These aren't extinct. Many are still active, and some of them are doing things we don't fully understand. You hover above the rim of one such structure, now cone-shaped split with fissures and glowing faintly red near the vent. Sulfur bubbles rise around you like champagne in slow motion. It's strangely beautiful in a hostile end-of-the-world sort of way. Volcanoes like this one dot the ocean floor in the thousands. In fact, There are more underwater volcanoes than surface ones by far. Some scientists estimate over 1 million submarine volcanoes exist worldwide. Most are dormant. Some erupt continuously. A few have only ever erupted once, and we still don't know why. You drift closer. This particular caldera wasn't on maps until a few years ago. In 2014, a series of unusual seismic tremors in the Pacific led researchers to investigate what they assumed was tectonic movement. What they found instead was a brand new undersea volcano, 2.5 miles tall, rising from the floor like a skyscraper. And it wasn't just there, it was growing. It turns out, underwater volcanoes can form quickly, sometimes in a matter of weeks. Lava spills from fissures, cools almost instantly in the frigid seawater, and layers upon itself until it becomes a mountain. And because it's underwater, the usual warning signs, smoke, ash, lava fountains never reach the surface. Entire mountains are born in silence. But sometimes, something escapes. In 2018, a rare phenomenon occurred near the Kingdom of Tonga. A previously undocumented underwater volcano erupted with such force that it sent pumice rafts floating for miles across the Pacific. Entire sheets of volcanic rock light, enough to drift, spread like oil slicks on the surface. Sailors described the eerie sight as a floating stone desert. Birds tried to land on it. Fish fled from beneath it. And then the strangest part, the eruption created new land. A small island emerged near the eruption site, bare, steaming, toxic at first. But within months, satellite images showed signs of vegetation, even bird life. Nature, as usual, refused to wait. Historians still argue whether early human myths about islands rising from the sea could be tied to such events. It's not hard to imagine ancient sailors witnessing one of these rare volcanic births and recording it as divine or magical. You see land where there was none. You hear thunder beneath the waves, and the water boils. The mystery deepens when you consider the acoustic anomalies these volcanoes often produce. Hydrophones underwater, microphones used by oceanographers and sometimes militaries, have picked up strange repetitive sounds near volcanic ridges. Pulses, knocks, and long harmonic tones that seem too regular to be random. Some suggest these are magma chambers, expanding or venting gases. Others think they could be signs of tectonic stress, but a few recordings just don't match any known geological source. One famous recording from near the mid-Atlantic ridge features a deep bell-like tone that repeats every 17 minutes. No known volcano produces sound like it. It's still unexplained. Then there's the life around them. Hydrothermal vents, cracks in the seafloor near volcanic activity, spew superheated mineral-rich water into the ocean. Despite temperatures exceeding 700 degrees F, life thrives in these zones. Giant tube worms, clams, crabs, and shrimp cluster around the vents, surviving not on sunlight, but on chemosynthesis. Like brine pool microbes, these creatures convert chemicals into energy, forming entirely independent food chains. But what's especially eerie is how fast they appear. When a new vent opens, life finds it quickly, sometimes in a matter of days. No one fully understands how. These ecosystems are miles apart, and yet species seem to jump from one to another as if guided. One theory suggests microbial spores drift through the deep currents, lying dormant until conditions are right. Another theory, more fringe, is that the Earth itself maintains a kind of biological memory. That life knows how to return to fire. As you circle the volcano's rim, you spot something strange, a plume of dark water swirling like ink in the cold. It's superheated fluid, rich with metals and sulfides. Around it, the rocks are coated in fuzzy mats of bacteria. But deeper in the plume, something flashes. You move closer. Is it a fish? No. A jellyfish? No, it doesn't move like either. It's something else. Iridescent like liquid glass, pulsing slowly with light. You blink, and it vanishes into the vent's heat. Did you see it? or imagine it. That's the nature of deep-sea volcanism. It doesn't offer answers, just more questions. Each new discovery spawns a dozen more. Why do some volcanoes emit electric currents? Why do some produce magnetically charged rock? Why do certain deep-sea species only appear near particular underwater mountains and nowhere else? And then there's the seismic mystery. In 2021, a seismic swarm was detected near Mayotte, a small island between Madagascar and Mozambique. For weeks, hundreds of small earthquakes rattled the ocean floor. Then, a new underwater volcano, one of the largest in recorded history, was discovered. But it had formed entirely in silence. No eruption was seen, no signs were noticed. It just existed one day. That's the kind of subtle, terrifying power these formations have. They don't erupt for attention. They move continents. Quietly, you drift upward past glowing fissures and coral-like mineral towers. Steam coils around you, forming brief halos in your light. Above, the water grows calmer again, cooler. But the rumble continues somewhere far below. You've seen the volcano. You've felt its heat. But what else does the ocean hide in the cracks of its crust? Next, you'll follow the sound. And not just any sound, but one that has haunted scientists for decades. A deep, booming, near-impossible noise known only as the bloop. The further you rise, the colder the water becomes again. Not in a biting way, more like a numbness, as if you've slipped into a dream where your skin no longer matters. The volcanic heat fades behind you, swallowed by depth and silence. But silence doesn't last long down here. You start to hear something. Not sharply, but subtly, like a pressure in your ears, a low vibration you feel more than hear. It's not the rumble of tectonics, not the whir of a sub, and not the gentle hiss of currents. It's deeper, longer, stranger. This is the mystery known as the bloop, one of the most famous unexplained sounds ever recorded in the ocean. And even now, decades after its discovery, no one can say for certain what made it. Let's rewind. In 1997, a network of hydrophones, underwater microphones originally set up during the Cold War to detect Soviet submarines, picked up something odd in the southern Pacific Ocean. Somewhere near 50 degrees south, 100 degrees west, deep in a remote part of the ocean far off the coast of South America, an ultra-low frequency sound was recorded. It was strange, not just because of its pitch or volume, but because of its scale. The bloop was so loud it was picked up by multiple sensors more than 3,000 miles apart. That's an acoustic footprint longer than the continental United States. At first, researchers at NOAA were baffled. The sound had a frequency profile that resembled a living creature, organic, not mechanical. But the size of the creature that could produce such a sound, it would have to be larger than a blue whale. And here's the thing. Nothing we know of, no animal ever discovered, can do that. Cue the theories. Some suggested a colossal, undiscovered sea creature. Something ancient. Something deep. Cryptozoologists were quick to propose modern-day leviathans, or even Cthulhu-style beasts slumbering in ocean trenches. The fact that H.P. Lovecraft's fictional city of Orleans was located eerily close to the bloop's origin didn't help calm things down. Others proposed shifting ice shelves, massive chunks of Antarctic ice, cracking and grinding against each other, under pressure, producing deep, resonant tones. This theory has gained traction. In 2005, NOAA suggested that the bloop was consistent with icequake activity. And sure, that's the safe explanation. Ice, simple, boring. But there's a problem. Icequakes do produce loud, strange noises, but not usually ones that rise in pitch like the bloop did. Not ones that have that peculiar organic modulation like something breathing or groaning. And not ones that are that consistent across so many sensors. Historians still argue whether NOAA's icequake explanation holds up under scrutiny. Some researchers quietly point out that icequakes don't explain other strange underwater sounds recorded in similar regions over the years. Names like Julia Upsweep and Slow Down, each with its own fingerprint, its own story. We'll get to those later. For now, imagine this. You're floating thousands of feet below the surface, and your hydrophone starts picking up a sound. Not a blip, a bloop. It starts low, rises sharply, then fades. A sound so large it sounds like the ocean itself inhaled, and then nothing. It never repeated. Not exactly. There were similar signals, yes, bursts of unknown origin, some rhythmic, some chaotic, but never that sound from that location at that volume ever again. Which leads us to the real mystery. Was the bloop a one-time event? A freak geological anomaly? Or was it a voice? You listen now, drifting in a soundscape you can't interpret. Your sensors detect faint rumbles in the distance, nothing so dramatic as the bloop, but suggestive. Pulses, like footsteps. You follow them, even though part of you would rather not. This is the part of the ocean where things go missing. Ships, signals, explanations. Some acoustic experts believe we don't fully understand how sound even travels in the deep sea. Temperature layers, salinity pressure, all distort transmission in subtle ways. Sounds can be bent, stretched, or even trapped in sound channels that let them travel absurd distances without fading. One theory says the bloop might have originated from far away and only sounded like it came from the South Pacific. If that's true, the creature or quake or event that caused it might be somewhere else entirely. There's a creepier theory. It suggests that something might have made the sound on purpose. Sound is communication after all. Whales sing. Dolphins click. Even fish have their grunts and pulses. What if the bloop was a call, a warning? Or here's a wild thought, a test. Not of our technology, but of our reaction. Did you hear that? Yes, we did. We all did. And then, nothing. Silence. You float for a long time surrounded by quiet. It's not peaceful though. It's the kind of quiet that feels strategic, like something paused when it realized it had been noticed. This is why the bloop keeps coming up, why it lingers in the imagination of scientists and storytellers alike. Because deep down, we don't like admitting that something might be out there, listening. You think back to the early sonar arrays used by the Navy. Rumors have long circulated that these devices picked up other strange sounds in the 70s and 80s, noises that were scrubbed from records or labeled classified. And maybe those are just rumors. Or maybe the ocean keeps secrets better than we do. As you rise through another thermal layer, the water shifts again. You feel a chill, not from temperature, but from intuition. Somewhere in this vast dark space, something knows the sound you're thinking about. And maybe it's still waiting. Next, we'll listen again. Different frequency, different origin. Another name from NOAA's unexplained files, Julia. But that's another mystery for another depth. You drift upward into cooler waters again. The pressure lessens, but the tension doesn't. Something about this part of the ocean feels thinner. Not physically, but emotionally. Like sound carries further feelings, echo longer, and distance doesn't protect you the way it should. You're still thinking about the bloop, but now another sound is coming into focus. It's not quite a groan, not quite a scream. It's drawn out, distorted like a moan caught in slow motion. You're listening to Julia. Recorded on March 1st, 1999 by NOAA's hydrophones in the eastern equatorial Pacific, Julia is another one of those sounds that science picked up but still hasn't pinned down. It lasted for about 15 seconds. Deep, mournful, low frequency. And like the bloop, it was loud enough to be heard by multiple sensors hundreds of miles apart. What makes Julia different, though, is how unsettlingly human it sounds. Where the bloop seemed like a pulse or a call, Julia is more like a lament, a stretched wail. You don't hear it with your ears, you feel it vibrating through your ribs, like someone sighing into the hull of a ship. NOAA suggested it was likely the sound of a large iceberg grounding somewhere along Antarctica's coast. Again, a practical answer. Clean. Scientific. But like the Bloop, Julia's profile doesn't quite match what you'd expect from shifting ice. There's a moment about 6 seconds in where the pitch wavers just slightly. It curves like a phrase, like a question. Historians still argue whether this wavering pattern could indicate an organic source. Some say it could be a large marine animal. Others say it could be echoes bouncing off complex terrain. But here's the issue: Julia occurred in a region not known for iceberg activity. And when researchers tried to locate the supposed source of the sound, they found nothing. Not even an iceberg. So what made it? Fringe theorists love Julia. Some link it to ancient myths of sea gods and whaling spirits. Others suggest it could be a form of sonar from an undiscovered deep-sea species. One particularly imaginative theory posits that Julia might not be a sound at all, but a kind of distress signal. The ocean's version of a flare gun. A warning broadcast on a frequency we were never meant to hear. You try to imagine it. Some enormous creature pinned in a trench or lost beneath collapsing rock, sending out one last cry. Or a chorus of smaller beings harmonizing without knowing they're being recorded by technology orbiting thousands of feet above them. Either way, it's hard not to assign emotion to the sound, because Julia doesn't feel random. It feels lonely. Some researchers have likened Julia to the so-called 52 Hz whale, a real-life marine mystery. This whale sings at a frequency unlike any other species, too high for blue whales, too low for fin whales. It's never been seen, only heard, and it always sings alone. Some call it the loneliest whale in the world. What if Julia was that whale, or something like it? Something unique out of sync, calling out into the abyss, in a voice no one else understands. You pause the recording and drift in silence. Your lights sweep across the seafloor, revealing nothing. Just pale silt, broken shells, and the slow sway of forgotten currents. But you can still feel the sound, like it's clinging to the water itself. It's hard not to wonder if Julia will ever happen again. So far, it hasn't. No other sound has matched its tone or pattern precisely. Some similarities have been noted, but nothing definitive. Julia remains a one-time event. Or perhaps it's happened again, but we weren't listening. That's the thing about underwater acoustics, they're deeply, deeply unreliable. The ocean plays games with sound. It bends it, bounces it, eats it. Even now, our best listening devices can't capture everything, and the ones that can are often classified or turned off. Sound can travel for thousands of miles in the right water layers, but miss a hydrophone by 10 meters. And it might go completely unheard. So the idea that we've heard all there is to hear, naive at best. And it gets stranger. In the months following the Julia event, several deep-sea research teams operating in nearby waters reported minor malfunctions. Navigation drifted. Data went missing. Equipment powered off for no reason. No one made the connection at first, until one researcher noticed the timing. Most of the glitches occurred within hours of the Julia sound being recorded. Could be coincidence, could be something more. You float through this part of the ocean like a wire strung between memories. The sea is still, but it doesn't feel passive. It feels watchful, like something is waiting to make noise again when it's ready. You glance at your instruments, a blip, then another, very faint, just below your range, but repeating. Rhythmic. Could be a current, could be pressure shifts, or it could be something practicing. One thing's certain, Julia wasn't just another deep-sea hum. It was a voice. And for one brief moment in 1999, that voice broke through the static. And we heard it. The question now is, what did it hear back? You begin to move again. Your path curves toward the Central Pacific. You're entering another strange acoustic zone, one where more unexplained sounds have been logged than almost any other. The next mystery is more structured, more consistent. It's called Upsweep, and it might be the ocean's version of Morse code. There's something mesmerizing about drifting through the Pacific thermocline. The water shifts in barely perceptible gradients. the temperature layers folding around you like invisible veils. Above nothing, below everything. The silence you carry in your suit is louder than ever. But this silence isn't empty, it pulses. You're entering the territory of Upsweep, another unexplained underwater sound that, unlike the Bloop or Julia, didn't just appear once and vanish. No Upsweep repeats. It recurs in mysterious, almost clockwork fashion, season after season, and it's still not fully understood. The first time scientists heard it was in 1991. It was captured by the same hydrophone array that recorded the Bloop part of the U.S. Navy's SOSUS sound surveillance system. Network later made available for scientific use. It originated somewhere near the Pacific's volcanic ring of fire, a tectonically volatile region bristling with underwater ridges and active seamounts. The sound itself, imagine a mechanical whoop rising in pitch then dropping again, repeated in sequences. Not quite sonar, not whale song, not mechanical either. Just upsweep. The most unsettling part. It's strongest during certain seasons, particularly around spring and autumn, and then fades. No marine organism is known to produce anything like it, and no volcanic activity in the region matches its regularity. You pause your descent and listen again. There, it is a faint upward chirp, like someone slowly running a finger across a glass rim. Then a pause. Then another. Historians still argue whether Upsweep is volcanic in nature. Some propose that it's the result of water interacting with magma in seafloor vents, like hot lava, meeting cold seawater, generating repetitive thermal bursts. Others suggest it might be tectonic friction plates grinding and slipping in a pattern that mimics rhythm. But if that's true, why only in some seasons? Why so regularly? Why for over 30 years? It's like the Earth has a pulse, but no heartbeat should sound like this. You dive deeper toward the source. The bathymetry of the region is sharp, steep underwater cliffs, long fault lines, and jagged outcrops of volcanic basalt. These places are largely unmapped. Some appear on satellite scans as mere blips. Others vanish entirely, as if cloaked by sonar anomalies. And it's in those gaps, those unlit corners, that Upsweep seems strongest. One 2003 expedition sent autonomous underwater vehicles into a suspected upsweep zone near the Mariana back arc. The ROVs recorded partial sounds, odd harmonics, truncated tones, but then lost contact. A day later, both devices resurfaced operational, but blank. No logs, no visuals, just a flat data dump and 2 drained power cells. That might be a fluke, or it might be a message. There's something distinctly coded about Upsweep. Not in the aliens are calling sense, though yes, fringe theorists do love that angle, but in the way it repeats. There's structure, rise, fall, pause, then again. Always the same pattern. Some speculate it's natural sonar produced by an undiscovered organism using seismic vibration to map terrain. Others think it's geological. But the signals don't echo like quakes, and they're far too uniform to be chaotic magma flow. You imagine just for a moment that it's a language, not human, not even biological, but something, like tectonic breath, like the planet clearing its throat. And that idea is oddly comforting. Because what's worse than a speaking Earth? A silent one. At least this sound implies presence, activity, something moving, pushing, responding. And down here, presence is rare. You approach a series of narrow ridges, fissures in the crust, where the ocean floor stretches and breathes. Small bubbles rise from the cracks. Thermophilic bacteria form mats that ripple like moss in slow motion. You shine your light along the slope and see tracks, grooves in the silt, too evenly spaced for debris, too deep for current. Something passed here, not recently, but deliberately. Upsweep continues in the distance. You wonder if this is what whales hear when they sing, if they're not just calling each other, but harmonizing with the Earth itself. In fact, in recent years, some whale song patterns have been found to mirror segments of Upsweep. Not exactly, but enough to raise eyebrows. Is it mimicry, coincidence, or something deeper? Some researchers speculate whales might use Upsweep as navigation, that it acts like a deep-sea beacon, like a lighthouse for the abyss, that it tells them when to move, when to migrate, where the ridges rise, and where the depths drop. But if whales are listening, who's broadcasting? Fringe theorists have no shortage of ideas. Ancient alien beacons, forgotten technologies buried beneath the crust. One theory, drawn from native Pacific Islander legends, suggests that certain regions of the ocean sing when they're disturbed, that the land itself protests movement, which is poetic and eerie, especially when you consider the fact that Upsweep changed after major earthquakes. In 2004, after the devastating Sumatra-Andaman quake, Upsweep grew quieter for several months, almost as if something had been reset. That's not scientific proof, but it's suggestive. You pause again. Upsweep's tones wash over you like sonar ghosts. You realize you've heard them before in documentaries and podcasts, maybe even in your sleep. The sound is familiar now, almost soothing, which is dangerous, because when you get used to a mystery, you stop questioning it, and Upsweep shouldn't be ignored. It's the ocean's way of reminding you that some patterns still defy classification, that not everything that repeats is understood. That familiarity is not the same as comprehension. You bank away from the ridge and rise again. The sound fades behind you, but not completely. It lingers, faint, persistent, like it's following you, like it knows you were listening. As you pass another thermal layer, the pressure lifts slightly. You begin to wonder if Upsweep has a cousin, something stranger, something more elusive. What would it sound like? The ocean answers with your next destination, a biological mystery. Not sound this time, but sight. A creature so bizarre, so rarely seen, that it bends the rules of evolution. It floats beneath you, now suspended like a ghost in the dark. A jellyfish, a squid, something in between. You're about to meet the colossal squid, and this won't be a gentle introduction. You see it before your instruments do. Just beyond the range of your lights, something moves. Slowly, gracefully, as if it's gliding through a dream you're not supposed to remember. You shift direction, and the lights catch it. A ripple of pale flesh, a fluttering membrane, eyes the size of dinner plates that reflect the glow like deep water catching the moon. This is colossal squid behavior, and even now, after decades of speculation, blurry footage, and half-eaten whales, no one truly knows how they live, how they hunt, or even why they exist. The colossal squid, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, is not a myth. It's real, tangible, tangled in fishing lines, hauled up half-frozen from the depths of Antarctic waters. The first specimen found intact was in 2007, caught accidentally by a long-line trawler in the Ross Sea. It measured 33 feet long, and that's a juvenile. What makes the colossal squid different from its better-known cousin, the giant squid, isn't just size, it's bulk. This species has massive heavy bodies and tentacles lined with rotating hooks. Yes, hooks. Like something out of a nightmare, each limb is equipped with serrated, swiveling barbs that can dig into prey and hold fast. Imagine trying to escape a squid that brought a toolbox. You float now in waters similar to where they've been spotted, cold, inky black, nutrient-rich. The Southern Ocean is vast and largely unexplored. Here below 3,000 feet, the water remains almost motionless. Sound is muffled. Light is nothing but a memory. And somewhere in this endless quiet, the colossal squid waits. Unlike other predators, it doesn't chase. It ambushes. You hover in darkness, imagining it hovering too, just out of reach, reading vibrations in the water, waiting for the exact moment to strike. Not fast, like a shark, not furious like an eel, but efficient, calculated, cold. Historians still argue whether the scars found on sperm whales, massive circular wounds, the size of tractor tires, are caused by colossal squids. Many believe so. These two giants have been locked in evolutionary combat for millions of years. Whale and squid. Echolocation versus camouflage. Speed versus strategy. Some battles take place miles beneath the surface, leaving behind only scars, beaks, and legends. And yet, we've never seen one alive in its natural habitat. Let that sink in. Not one complete confirmed video of a living colossal squid doing what it does, hunting, feeding, mating. Nothing. Only corpses, torn tentacles, and those black, lifeless eyes caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Why is that? Some say they live too deep. Others say they're simply too rare. But perhaps the truth is simpler and more unsettling. They don't want to be found. Because here's something else we've discovered. Colossal squid have some of the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, bigger than human heads. They're designed not for light, but for movement in total darkness. These eyes can detect the faintest flicker, a silhouette against the shimmer of bioluminescent plankton, meaning while you can't see them, they can see you. Even now, you shiver despite the suit. Some recent deep-sea probes have detected massive gelatinous signatures passing silently through sonar too large for fish, too slow for whales. But they never last long. They appear, then vanish, and always in regions squid are known to frequent. Could be coincidences, could be misreadings, or it could be that the colossal squid moves with a stealth we don't understand. One 2012 encounter documented by Japanese researchers showed a giant squid using jet propulsion to glide upward from the deep in near total silence. No turbulence, no wake. It moved like a ghost rising through ink. So what can the colossal squid do? There's a fringe hypothesis whispered mostly in marine biology forums and shared over grainy Zoom calls late at night that these creatures possess a kind of passive radar, not sonar, but something else. A biological sensitivity to magnetic fields. That they can feel disruptions like migratory pulses in fish or the electric fields of other deep-sea dwellers. It sounds like sci-fi, until you remember that sharks' rays and even platypuses have similar electroreception. Nature already built this. Why not perfect it at depth? You drift further deeper into the cold zone. Lights dimmed, systems low. You want to feel what it's like to be invisible, to hunt by stillness. And then a flicker. Your camera picks up the edge of something translucent, ribbed undulating slowly past your left flank. Not a squid, a jellyfish, a very large jellyfish, probably harmless. But behind it, motion, tentacles, smooth like polished rope. They stretch across your field of view for only a moment and then retract too quickly to follow. You weren't the only one watching that jellyfish. Whatever it was, decided not to compete. A few minutes pass, no more sightings. You check your logs, just blur, but blur with mass. Weight, purpose. You begin to ascend again, and in doing so, you think about the stories sailors used to tell of krakens, of sea devils, of arms that wrapped entire ships and pulled them to the abyss. We laugh at those tales now, but every myth starts somewhere. Every tall tale casts a shadow, and the colossal squid, that shadow is still swimming. One last thing. The preserved specimens we've studied show signs of deep battle wounds. Many are blind in one eye. Some have healed tears in their mantles, which means they survive attacks. Big ones, maybe even each other. No one has ever seen two colossal squid together. No mating, no group sightings, which leads to the theory that they may be solitary hunters, the deep-sea version of lone wolves. Territorial, tactical, possibly even cannibalistic. You wouldn't want to find yourself between two of them. You wouldn't want to find yourself between one and anything. And yet, here you are, alive, floating back toward the surface with a camera full of questions and not nearly enough answers. You know what's worse? There are stranger things yet to come, because not every deep-sea creature announces itself with hooks and scars. Some shimmer, some slither. And some, like the giant oarfish, simply appear uninvited from below. You've seen shadows. You've heard the ocean speak in pulses and cries. But now something glides toward you, not fast, not aggressive, just unsettlingly long. It doesn't swim so much as sway. At first, you think it's seaweed caught on a current. Then it bends, folds, undulates like a silver ribbon twisting through the dark. This is the giant oarfish, also known as the messenger from the sea god's palace in Japanese legend, and it is very real. In fact, it might be the origin of almost every sea serpent myth ever told. You hold still. Its body stretches out longer than a bus, thin as a curtain, yet covered in luminous scales that reflect your lights like polished aluminum. Its eyes are small, its mouth mostly closed, but it watches you. No rush, no fear, just drifting. The giant oarfish Regalicus glesnae is the longest bony fish ever recorded. Some specimens reach over 35 feet, though unconfirmed reports from fishing trawlers and deep-sea miners claim sightings exceeding 50 feet, half the length of a blue whale. Let that sink in. And yet, despite their length, they're not thick-bodied like whales or sharks. They're ribbon-like, eel-like, floating head-up tail, down almost vertically, with a red crest, like a dragon's fin running the length of their back. Their movement is surreal, hypnotic. You float closer, careful not to disturb the current. They live in the mesopelagic and bathypelagic zones, roughly 650 to 3,300 feet below the surface, though they sometimes rise higher, especially before storms or seismic events. That's one of the reasons they've gained a supernatural reputation in folklore. In Japan, oarfish were long thought to be omens of tsunamis and earthquakes. It wasn't just superstition. In 2011, shortly before the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, multiple oarfish were found washed up on beaches across the country. Fishermen whispered warnings, biologists shrugged, and then the fault line moved. Historians still argue whether this behavior is coincidence or instinct. Could oarfish detect seismic shifts, pressure changes in the Earth's crust? After all, many animals sense disasters before they happen. Dogs flee, birds vanish. Why not fish? Fringe theorists suggest something deeper: magnetoreception. That oarfish might perceive changes in Earth's magnetic field, shifts we can't detect. That their long ribbon-like bodies act like antennas, registering subtle tremors and relaying them in behavior. Whatever the reason, when oarfish appear near the surface, old sailors take note. And so should you. You watch now as this one weaves slowly around you, unbothered. It pulses its dorsal fin in delicate waves, using almost no energy. It doesn't hunt like a predator. It feeds on plankton krill jellyfish, passive mostly, but unsettling in size alone. And then, just as silently as it came, it begins to descend. You follow it a moment, drawn by curiosity, but it vanishes into the black with a single flick, vanishing so cleanly it's as if it wasn't real. Just an idea the ocean allowed you to borrow. You check your recordings, grainy, blurry. It's always like that. Despite dozens of strandings, oarfish remain elusive, rarely caught on camera, rarely observed in their natural habitat, almost never studied alive. Most of what we know comes from dead specimens, washed up, bloated, their silvery sheen faded to dull gray. But there's one fact that gets glossed over: we don't know how they reproduce. No confirmed spawning sites, no known mating behaviors, no juvenile oarfish have ever been observed. Think about that. A species over 30 feet long that drifts across the world's oceans, that people have seen for centuries, and we still don't know how it breeds. Maybe they spawn in deep trenches. Maybe they live solitary lives, meeting once and never again. Or maybe there's something about their life cycle that defies what we think we know about marine biology. You're reminded of an event off the coast of Chile in 2013. 2 oarfish were spotted in the same week, each more than 20 feet long, each behaving erratically, surfacing, diving, spinning near fishing lines. Locals feared a tsunami. No quake came, but 2 weeks later, a deep-sea landslide disrupted a major fishery. Coincidence? Or signal? That's the pattern with oarfish. They don't stay. They appear. They appear when something else is about to happen. And when they vanish, you're left with more questions than before. Are they sentinels? Indicators? Relics from a time when the Earth's rhythms were louder and less ignored? Or are they just strange fish with strange habits? You start to rise again, leaving the ribbon behind. The ocean above you grows darker, not because of the depth, but because you're heading toward another kind of shadow. Ahead, vents are steaming, not volcanic this time, hydrothermal. Here the ocean doesn't just hide creatures, it creates them. Your next encounter, a living chimney, a biological furnace. You're about to meet the black smokers and the life that thrives around them. It starts with warmth. Not the gentle kind that rises from the sun, but a creeping, almost metallic heat that swells up from beneath your feet. You're thousands of feet below the surface, where sunlight hasn't touched in eons. And yet, it's warm here. You've arrived at the territory of the black smokers. They're not mythical beasts or unexplained noises. They're geological phenomena, yet they feel alive. Towering chimneys spewing columns of black water hot enough to melt lead rising from cracks in the ocean floor. And somehow, impossibly, they're surrounded by life. These are hydrothermal vents, places where seawater seeps into the Earth's crust, heats up to 700 degrees, and bursts back out rich with minerals. What you're seeing isn't smoke. It's superheated water, thick with sulfur iron and manganese jetting into near-freezing ocean depths, creating black plumes that billow like underwater bonfires. You drift closer, careful to stay upstream. Around the base of the chimney, life blooms. Not gently, not sparsely, but furiously. Tube worms taller than you, their tips blood red. Mussels the size of dinner plates. Ghostly crabs with no eyes. And somewhere nearby, things with no names, pale twitching, folded into rocky crevices. How do they survive? Photosynthesis is impossible here, there's no light. Instead, these organisms rely on chemosynthesis. That's right. Entire ecosystems that run not on sunlight, but on sulfur. The bacteria that coat these rocks feed on hydrogen sulfide, converting it into energy. Then, other creatures, tube worms, clams, shrimp, eat the bacteria or live in symbiosis with it. It's a complete self-sustaining food chain fueled by poison and heat. Let that settle in. In a world that looks inhospitable to the extreme, more alien than the surface of Mars, life doesn't just exist. It thrives. And here's where it gets truly strange. These vent systems are isolated, spread miles apart, sometimes oceans apart. Yet each supports unique life form species that exist nowhere else on Earth. Some vents host worms with metal scales. Others breed shrimp with heat sensors on their backs. Every chimney is its own bizarre kingdom, built on volcanic gas and blind survival. Historians still argue whether life on Earth began in a place like this. One theory gaining traction is that hydrothermal vents were the cradles of biology. That before photosynthesis, before oxygen, before trees and trilobites, life first emerged in the hot, chemical-rich waters around these smokers. Not as fish or jellyfish, but as microscopic archaea thriving off mineral soup in the dark. If that's true, then these vents are ancient cathedrals still burning with the original fire of Earth's biology. You watch now as a squat lobster claws its way along a pipe of sulfur-encrusted rock. Its shell gleams like porcelain. Behind it, hundreds of tube worms pulse with fluid motion, opening and closing in sync with unseen currents. There's no color here, at least none your eyes are used to. Everything is pale silver or red. Red because at this depth, red is invisible. Predators can't see it. So down here, red is camouflage. You ease your craft closer to a particularly active vent. Instruments spike, temperature jumps, and then movement. Not small, not gentle. A slow drift of shadow crosses your field of view. Too slow for a fish, too controlled for current. It moves behind a wall of smoke, then disappears. You wait, nothing. But something about this vent feels watched. There are stories, fringe theories, about creatures adapted to this heat, not just surviving it, but feeding on it directly. Stories of vent-borne predators, large armored and slow lurking near fresh chimneys to hunt anything drawn to warmth. No proof, of course, only rumors, data anomalies, missing drones. One 2016 expedition near the East Pacific Rise recorded a sudden spike in temperature followed by 3 hours of total sensor blackout. When the submersible returned, one manipulator arm was twisted, not broken, twisted, as if gripped and turned. The footage corrupted. Coincidence? Maybe. But you feel it now, the gravity of the place. These aren't just underwater geysers. They're thresholds, natural portals between geological and biological worlds, between rock and life, between death and rebirth. You rise slightly, trying to see the chimney from above. It's taller than expected, over 60 feet, built by bacteria and minerals layer by layer like a termite mound from the Earth's molten blood. And it's growing, always growing. Some vents collapse, others bloom anew. It's a cycle, one we barely understand. And when they die, everything around them dies too. Species that depend entirely on the vent on its warmth and chemicals perish within days. It's like watching a forest vanish after the sun goes out. But here's what's truly haunting. New vents emerge in silence, often overnight, reshaping the seafloor. New species arrive. Old ones disappear. Evolution speeds up. 10,000 years of change compressed into a single volcanic breath. Nature's rules bend here. And then, as you prepare to drift upward, your sonar pings something unexpected, a double chimney. 2 vents side by side, braided like horns spouting plumes into a swirl of pink-tinted water. No one's seen this configuration before. You record footage, take readings, and as you pan the camera, there, a flash, not light, bioluminescence. A thin, flickering band of pale blue curls behind a rock. Too fast for a worm, too steady for a fish. You track it, but it's gone. There's more here. More than biology, more than geology. A whole language written in heat pressure and minerals, and we're just starting to learn the alphabet. As the black smokers vanish below you in clouds of particulate ash, you begin to rise once again. Not to the surface, but toward the middle zone. A place where darkness lives, but life glows. Your next encounter. A phenomenon that doesn't hiss or scream. It shines. Welcome to the surreal world of deep sea bioluminescence, where everything you feared in the dark might already be lighting up. There's a strange paradox about the deep sea. The further from sunlight you go, the more things start to glow. You're entering the realm of deep sea bioluminescence, where darkness is not absence, it's backdrop. A stage and life here, it performs in light. Out of all the mysteries you've explored so far, unexplained sounds, colossal creatures, vents spewing black fire. This might be the most enchanting. Because this isn't about what we don't hear or don't see. This is about what we do see. Flashes, pulses, cascades of blue, green, red, even purple, twinkling through the pitch black like underwater stars. But these aren't just pretty lights. They're language, lure, warning, and sometimes trickery. You dim your craft's external lights and let the darkness settle. At first, it's thick, pure void. Then faintly, it begins. A ripple of blue dots, a distant spiral of green sparks, a sudden angry burst of red just outside your field of view. Welcome to the Biological Light Show. Bioluminescence is the production of light by living organisms through chemical reactions usually involving luciferin and luciferase 2 molecules that, when combined, emit photons. It's not heat-based like a light bulb. It's cool, efficient, and perfectly designed for the deep. Roughly 75% of all known deep-sea creatures use bioluminescence in some way. They don't have a choice. Down here, it's the only visual language. Some fish use it to attract mates blinking in Morse-like pulses across miles. Others to confuse predators like a squid that releases glowing ink instead of black. The predator chases the light while the squid slips away unseen. And then there are the lures. You remember the anglerfish, of course, the dangling lantern that draws prey close enough to snap its toothy jaws shut. But that's just the beginner's guide. There are dragonfish with lights under their eyes that flash patterns each species tuned to its own code. Hatchetfish with rows of belly lights that mimic sunlight from above, making them invisible when viewed from below, a camouflage called counter-illumination. And flashlight fish who can blink their lights on and off, hiding or revealing themselves depending on who's watching. You pass a group of jellyfish now floating like parachutes. Each one pulses in soft rings of electric blue. You think they're dancing. Then one retracts curls and fires a burst of white. A warning. Something larger is nearby. You wait. Then you see it. A curtain of flickering green. Like a sheet of northern lights turned sideways, drifting toward you. It's a swarm of plankton, tiny glowing organisms reacting to motion. Every time your sub pulses water, they shimmer. Move too fast, and the ocean betrays you. Stay still, and you vanish. It's a constant tension between presence and absence. And some creatures, they weaponize that. Historians still argue whether certain fish like the stoplight loosejaw use red bioluminescence specifically because most deep-sea creatures can't see red. It's like carrying a flashlight in a world of people wearing blue-filtered goggles. You can see them, but they can't see you. Evolutionary spy gear. You float through a tangle of luminous threads, siphonophores, some stretching dozens of feet, almost like jellyfish, turned into glowing centipedes. Their lights blink in waves like runway signals, guiding prey toward the venomous tentacles. Beautiful. Deadly. Then a moment of absolute stillness. All lights blink out. Everything goes dark. And that's when the ocean plays its oldest trick surprise. A sudden flash erupts to your right, so bright it overloads your sensors. A creature you didn't see before, a Storateuthis octopus, has flared its bioluminescent arms. Not in aggression, but in deception. The flash distracts predators, mimics the explosion of a swarm, and gives the octopus a moment to vanish. When your vision clears, it's gone. You don't feel hunted, but you feel studied. There's a theory still controversial that some deep-sea creatures use bioluminescence to communicate across species, not just within their own kind, but as warning signals, territorial displays, or even deception aimed at entirely different animals. Think about that. A language made entirely of color, frequency, and timing, transmitted in total darkness to predators, prey, and competitors alike. Some marine biologists even think these pulses resemble the earliest forms of syntax, not words, but intent. Come here. Stay away. I see you. Its light is meaning. But here's the catch: we still can't decode it. In 2018, researchers working with the Schmidt Ocean Institute captured a sequence of glowing pulses from an unknown jellyfish species near Australia. The pattern repeated, changed, repeated again. It wasn't random, but to this day no one knows what it meant. You let that sink in. A creature living half a mile under the sea might be composing a sentence no one alive can read. You drift now through what looks like a quiet corridor of ink, but all around you are traces, glowing pinpricks in the distance, short-lived flashes behind coral structures, the twitch of a bioluminescent shrimp disturbed by your presence. And then you see something rare, a fish, wide-eyed, floating mid-column, entirely dark, until a pulse of blue flashes through a line on its flank. Then again, then gone. You realize it's blinking a code, not once, but rhythmically. You record it, but you won't understand it. Not yet. We've cataloged hundreds of bioluminescent species, but we suspect there are thousands more. maybe tens of thousands. Many too small, too faint, or too rare to find. And most of them, they've never seen the sun. They live entire lives in shadow, communicating in flickers. Living, hunting, mating, and dying in rhythms will never translate. You wonder if you could strip the ocean of its water and see it from space at night, would it look like a second sky? One flickering with messages, beacons, and luminous secrets. Maybe, but some lights drift too deep to ever be seen again. As you rise toward another thermocline, the pressure shifts. So does the tone. Because next, you're about to meet a creature with one of the most haunting names in biology. Not for how it kills, but for how it waits. Say hello to the vampire squid. You've met hunters. You've met giants. You've even met creatures that glow in the dark like living neon signs. But none of them, not even the colossal squid or black smokers, carry quite the same eerie dignity as what's floating toward you now. 8 arms, a webbed cloak, eyes like twin black opals reflecting nothing and everything at once. This is the vampire squid, and despite its name, it doesn't suck blood. But it does thrive in death. You hover, engine silent, as it approaches its gelatinous body, barely moving, drifting through the oxygen minimum zone. This isn't the abyss. It's deeper than that. A twilight zone within the twilight zone, an area so starved of oxygen that almost nothing survives here. Except this, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, the vampire squid from hell. And it fits. It isn't a true squid, or a true octopus. It's a distant cousin of both an ancient lineage that branched off hundreds of millions of years ago and simply kept going. Evolution passed it by, and it never bothered to catch up. Its body is soft, like velvet in water, jet black to purple depending on how your lights hit it. Its arms are lined not with suckers, but with sheery, tiny hair-like filaments that give it a frilled appearance. And when threatened, it inverts itself, turns inside out like a nightmarish umbrella, wrapping its webbed arms around its body, exposing dozens of spiny-looking projections. They're not sharp. They're not even real spines, just fleshy protrusions. But in the darkness, they look like teeth, like defense, like fear made manifest. You watch now as it floats upside-down, arms curled slightly, not swimming, hovering, as if it's meditating, or waiting, or remembering. Historians still argue whether the vampire squid is truly passive or simply misunderstood. It doesn't hunt like other cephalopods. It doesn't need to. Instead, it feeds on marine snow, a gentle blizzard of organic debris that drifts down from the surface, dead plankton, fecal matter, mucus strings, decaying jellyfish. What sounds disgusting is for the vampire squid a banquet. It uses 2 long retractable filaments, longer than its own body, to sweep the water, collecting particles and bundling them into a sticky, mucus-covered ball, which it then pulls into its mouth. No chase, no violence, just slow-motion scavenging. It's not a predator, it's a curator of decay, and that makes it all the more ghostly. While other creatures fight for prey, the vampire squid drifts in the still places. It requires so little oxygen, it can survive where most fish would suffocate in minutes. Some scientists suggest it has the lowest metabolic rate of any known cephalopod. It's perfectly adapted to isolation, and that might be its secret. You've probably heard of deep-sea gigantism, how things tend to grow enormous in the abyss. But vampire squids, they stay small. The largest ever found was just over a foot long. Small, yes, but unsettlingly human in proportion. Its cloak-like body, its expressive eyes, its refusal to die quickly. And let's talk about those eyes. They're enormous, proportionally the largest eyes of any animal on Earth. Think about that. An animal no larger than a house cat, with eyes as big as a dog's, designed to see in near-perfect darkness, to catch the faintest bioluminescent flicker, to detect movement in stillness. What does it see drifting alone year after year? One fringe theory suggests vampire squids can live for decades, that their slow metabolism and minimal physical activity allow them to live longer than any other cephalopod? We don't know for sure. Few specimens have been studied alive. Fewer still have survived long enough in captivity to observe their full life cycle. In 2014, a remotely operated vehicle from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute captured unprecedented footage of a vampire squid performing a behavior never seen before it released a glowing cloud, not of ink, but of bioluminescent mucus. Imagine that. No stinging, no biting, no running. Just a haze of glowing goo meant to distract or blind, giving it time to vanish. Nature's most passive smoke bomb. You shine your light gently on the one before you now. It responds by rotating slightly, tilting its bell-shaped body, and spreading its arms just a little. Enough to show that it knows you're there. And then it begins to ascend. Slow, effortless, like it's being pulled upward by a thought. You follow for a moment, matching its pace, wondering where it goes. It doesn't have a den or a nest. It's never been observed mating in the wild. Some think it releases gametes into the water at random. Others suggest it simply dies after spawning like other cephalopods. But what if it doesn't? What if it never stops? That would make it the deep sea's most enduring secret. A drifter, a collector, a silent observer of all things falling, all things forgotten. You pause your ascent, let it go ahead, not out of fear, but respect. You've seen apex predators, massive anomalies, seafloor furnaces, but nothing quite like this. The vampire squid isn't dangerous. It's not rare in the traditional sense, but it's rare in presence. It feels like something left over from another world. And maybe it is. It certainly acts like it remembers one. As the light from your sub fades and the creature vanishes into the layered black, you feel something shift. The water thickens. Or maybe your thoughts do. Because next, you're diving into a stranger shape altogether. It's not aggressive. It's not smart. It's not even scary. But it sees everything. Say hello to the Barreleye Fish, a creature with a transparent head and eyes that rotate inside its skull. You're about to meet a fish whose design is so bizarre, you'll spend the next 1,000 feet just trying to believe it's real. You've seen light bloom in the darkness. You've watched a squid turn itself inside out. But nothing prepares you for this. Hovering motionless ahead is a fish that seems more like a concept sketch than a creature. This is the Barreleye Fish, and its entire head is transparent. Yes, you read that right. Its skull is a dome clear as glass, through which you can see its actual eyeballs suspended inside, pointed upward. It's as if someone took a fish, carved out the front, and inserted 2 green-tinted marbles to float like searchlights in a bowl of jelly. But this isn't a deformity, it's design. Evolution perfected this weirdness over millions of years. And once you understand how it works, it makes a strange kind of sense. Macropinna microstoma is a small deep-sea fish, usually just 6 inches long. It lives in the mesopelagic zone around 2,000 to 2,600 feet below the surface, though sometimes deeper. In this pitch-black world, vision is everything. So instead of evolving big forward-facing eyes like a predator, the Barreleye evolved tubular eyes that point straight up, locked in place inside a fluid-filled dome. Why? To look for falling food. It hovers below jellyfish and siphonophores, waiting, watching. Its green eyes detect the silhouettes of prey drifting down from above. When the time is right, it rotates those eyes forward. Yes, rotates them inside its own head to track and capture the meal. Imagine that. You don't move your body, you just spin your eyes around in a skull made of jelly. Evolution is a weirder sculptor than we ever give it credit for. But here's what's even more fascinating. The Barreleye's transparent dome isn't just for show. It protects its eyes from stinging tentacles because its main diet consists of animals like siphonophores, which are basically floating colonies of jellyfish with venomous threads. So not only is it watching from below, it's swimming through danger using that dome like a biological windshield. Historians still argue whether the Barreleye is solitary or social. It's rarely seen. When it is, it's alone, motionless. But some researchers believe it might follow large jelly colonies over great distances, hitching a living from their leftovers. Think of it as the deep sea's silent stalker. No chase, no aggression, just infinite patience and the most alien face you've ever seen. You edge closer, now lights dimmed, letting the soft green glow of its eyes guide your view. Inside the dome, the eyes twitch slightly upward, downward, sideways. The movement is so subtle, you almost miss it. Then something shifts. The eyes turn toward you. You freeze. It doesn't move its body, just its vision. Quiet, calculating. You wonder, what does it see? Some fringe marine theorists suggest that Barreleye fish are capable of detecting the faintest shifts in electromagnetic fields, even more so than sharks. That the jelly surrounding their brains might amplify external signals, pressure, temperature, even sonar. It sounds far-fetched, but consider this: in 2021, researchers in the Pacific logged a group of barreleys changing depth rapidly to avoid a submarine drone. There was no noise, no movement, just a light pulse, and they vanished. Coincidence or instinct? Maybe they see us better than we see them. You stay motionless. The barreleye drifts closer, no movement in its fins, just subtle body control through its swim bladder. Its mouth is tiny, too small for anything but plankton, larval crustaceans, and jelly fragments. It's not here to hunt, it's here to observe. And as it floats within arm's length of your craft, you realize something else. It's upside down, not in the traditional sense, but relative to you. Its belly faces what you think of as up. Its eyes, now slowly rotating forward again, seem to study your reflection in the glass. What must you look like to it? A creature encased in metal, glowing and silent, humming with strange vibrations. Maybe you're its mystery, and maybe it doesn't like mysteries, because suddenly, without warning, it turns. Not fast, not urgent, just gone. Back into the ink, the dome fading into the dark like a soap bubble in black water. You exhale. You were holding your breath. One last glance at the footage confirms what you already know: it doesn't look real. Even in HD, the barreleye seems like CGI, like something from a dream. But it's real. It had to be real, because now you feel different. You've met alien life, and it was only 6 inches long. You begin to ascend again, slow and steady, still riding the thermoclines between warm and cold water. Your next subject isn't graceful, or elegant, or mysterious. It's ancient. It's rugged. It's the kind of thing you'd expect to see on a warning label. Say hello to the frilled shark, a creature that hasn't changed in 80 million years, and looks like something that forgot to evolve. And it's hungry. You're climbing now, gently rising from the alien zone of slow motion and silent watchers. But just as you cross into what scientists call the upper bathypelagic, something coils into your path. Not a serpent, not quite a shark, but something older than both. This is the frilled shark, and if anything in the ocean deserves the label prehistoric horror, it's this. The creature in front of you looks like it slithered straight out of a fossil and just never left. Its body is long and eel-like, nearly 7 feet in length, tapering into a tail that sways more like a ribbon than a fin. Its skin is dark brown, like cured leather. Its mouth, oh, its mouth is the stuff of maritime nightmares, wide, gaping, lined with over 300 trident-shaped teeth, all pointing backward in neatly arranged rows. You don't need a marine biology degree to understand nothing escapes that bite. But it's the head that's most unsettling. Blunt, flattened. Its jaws extend forward, yes, extend like a snake's, allowing it to grab prey far larger than you'd expect. And it gets its name from the frilly gill slits that line the sides of its neck, 6 pairs each, edged like lace, a bizarre contrast to its otherwise menacing design. You float motionless. It floats too. Unlike modern sharks, the frilled shark has no stiff body structure for quick bursts or agile turns. Instead, it swims in serpentine undulations, moving like a slow, deliberate whip through the water. It doesn't stalk. It coils, wraps, waits. Historians still argue whether the frilled shark is truly aggressive or simply misunderstood. Most specimens we've studied come from bycatch, accidentally netted in deep-water trawls. Alive, they look sluggish. But when hungry, footage from 2007 shows one latching onto prey with terrifying speed, lunging from beneath, wrapping its body around the fish, and clamping down with its hundreds of curved teeth. Once inside that mouth, there is no escape. The teeth ensure everything goes one direction in. It's a living trap, and it's barely changed in 80 million years. Let that sink in. When the last dinosaurs were limping into extinction, the frilled shark was already an apex predator. Not fast, not big, but efficient, effective, unbothered by evolution. You think back to a specimen filmed off the coast of Japan in 2007. It was found unusually close to shore, possibly disoriented by illness or seismic activity. The footage, while grainy, shows the animal twitching its jaw mouth constantly half open, as if ready to bite even in distress. And yet, despite the occasional beaching, these sharks are among the ocean's most elusive hunters. We don't know how many exist. We don't know where they breed. We've never observed a frilled shark pup in the wild. What we do know: their gestation period is possibly one of the longest of any vertebrate, somewhere between 3.5 to 4 years. That's right, 4 years, carrying a litter of unborn sharks in total darkness. No one really knows why. Maybe it's because of the cold. Maybe their metabolism is so slow that embryonic development takes forever. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a survival strategy so old we forgot it was possible. You stare into its eyes, now small, black, expressionless. There's no glint, no curiosity, just instinct. The frilled shark doesn't learn. It remembers. You inch your sub slightly to the side. The creature adjusts, curving around a column of rock like a ribbon tied in slow motion. It's not afraid. It's not excited. It's simply reacting as it has done for millennia. Some fringe researchers even speculate that frilled sharks may hunt by sound, detecting the faint vibrations of panicked prey. Others think they rely on ambush tactics, striking from below like a coiled spring. But most of it, we're just guessing. In 2019, a deep-sea expedition near the mid-Atlantic ridge reported a possible nursery zone, clusters of frilled sharks moving together, circling what looked like a vent-warmed trench. But when scientists returned, they found nothing. Gone. Not a skeleton, not an egg case, just silence. The ocean's version of you had to be there. You pull slightly away now, giving the predator its space. As you do, it turns once, almost lazily, and then vanishes into the dark, slipping behind a ledge of basalt, like a rumor retreating into history. You don't chase. Not this time. There's a weight to creatures like this, not just their mass, but their meaning. They're not just old. They're timeless. Survivors of extinction events, of climate swings, of human ignorance. You wonder, will they still be here when we're gone? Maybe. But for now, you're not done. One last sonar ping reveals something strange ahead. Not a fish, not a shipwreck, but metal and silence. You're approaching a tragedy wrapped in conspiracy, a modern ghost swallowed by the sea. Brace yourself for the cold truth about the disappearance of the USS Scorpion, one of the US Navy's greatest unsolved mysteries. You feel the water change. It's not temperature, not pressure. It's something subtler, like you've crossed an invisible line between nature's domain and human tragedy. You're gliding now toward the final resting place of the USS Scorpion, a United States nuclear submarine that disappeared in 1968 with 99 souls on board. No distress signal, no survivors, just a long silence, followed by whispers. The Scorpion was a skipjack-class submarine among the most advanced of its time. Sleek, fast, armed with nuclear torpedoes and propelled by a nuclear reactor, it could dive deep and move swiftly, ideal for Cold War surveillance and stealth. Its final mission, a return from the Mediterranean to its base in Norfolk, Virginia. It never made it. On May 22, 1968, somewhere in the North Atlantic, communications ceased. The Scorpion was declared overdue. Days passed, then weeks, and finally, the U.S. Navy confirmed what families feared most: the vessel was lost at sea. But the mystery wasn't that it was lost. It was how. You hover your sub near a stretch of ocean floor, 11,000 feet down. The wreckage here lies in two main pieces, the forward hull and the sail, and a shattered debris field scattered like a metal graveyard. The area is eerily intact, as if time forgot to break it down. The pressure here is intense, the silence deafening, and the questions still haven't stopped. One popular theory: a torpedo explosion. Maybe one of the Scorpion's own torpedoes armed itself accidentally, then detonated inside the vessel, causing a catastrophic implosion. Plausible, but it doesn't explain the fragmented evidence or the lack of a typical detonation signature. Historians still argue whether the Scorpion sank due to mechanical failure, human error, or hostile action. That last one sends a chill through your cabin. Hostile action. You see, the Scorpion vanished during a time of peak Cold War tension. Only a few months earlier, the Soviet sub K-129 had also gone missing, and some claim the Soviets retaliated. There are whispers of underwater duels, acoustic anomalies recorded by Navy SOSUS listening stations that suggest a chase occurred, something moving fast, turning abruptly, followed by a sharp metallic event, then silence. To this day, some believe the Scorpion was sunk by a Soviet torpedo. Others go deeper. Conspiracy theories propose the US may have sabotaged its own vessel to prevent sensitive technology from falling into foreign hands. Some claim a mutiny occurred on board, that crew members became aware of a radiation leak and tried to surface only to be silenced. You look at the wreckage, now silent cold, resting like a steel skeleton. The forward hull is crushed inward, suggesting implosion. But the damage isn't uniform. It's not like the Titanic broken by brute force. It looks almost surgical. What really happened? In 1993, the Navy quietly released new analysis. Their conclusion: a battery explosion, possibly caused by hydrogen gas buildup in the Scorpion's torpedo compartment. But that report didn't include sonar recordings, or testimonies from crew families, or classified acoustic data from the NSA. The truth still submerged. You pass slowly over a section of the hull where the metal curves inward like foil crumpled by a giant hand. Just above it, a torpedo tube lies open, empty. Why? Had a torpedo been launched? Did they try to defend themselves, or was something fired into the sub? No answers. Just more metal, more silence. You try to imagine the last moments. A sudden jolt, a klaxon wail, men at their stations shouting, emergency surfacing procedures, water rushing in, lights flickering. Then, nothing. A full implosion at this depth would have happened in less than a second. The pressure differential is instant. The human body doesn't rupture. It simply ceases. But still the questions linger. Why didn't they send a distress call? Why didn't anyone respond to the SOSUS anomaly in time? And here's the strangest thing: before departing, several crew members reportedly told loved ones they felt uneasy about the mission, that something wasn't right. One even joked, "I'll see you in heaven." Creepy coincidence, or a quiet knowing? One more detail chills you. The Scorpion was one of only 4 nuclear submarines ever lost by the United States, and its nuclear reactor and the 2 Mark 45 nuclear torpedoes it carried still rest at the bottom of the Atlantic, leaking, potentially. The area is monitored for radiation. So far, no significant contamination has been detected, but the ocean forgets slowly, and metal doesn't always stay sealed. As your sub hovers silently above the wreck, you see no plaque, no monument, just steel, sediment, shadows. But somewhere in this debris field lies the last memory of 99 men who trusted the sea and were swallowed by it. You linger for a moment longer and then ascend. Not far from here lies another sub with another story. A more recent one. Another mystery newer, but no less heavy. Prepare yourself for the loss of the Submarine San Juan, a tragedy that, like the Scorpion, left behind a trail of questions, grief, and silence. You're surfacing from the wreckage of one vanished sub, only to descend into the silence of another. This time you're headed to the South Atlantic. Different ocean, different flag, same chilling ending. This is the story of the ARA San Juan, an Argentine Navy submarine that vanished on November 15, 2017, with 44 crew members aboard. At first, the disappearance seemed like a communications glitch, routine even. Submarines are silent by nature. But when hours turned into days and still no signal came, through a terrible realization began to form. Something was very, very wrong. The ARA San Juan was a German-built TR-1700 class diesel-electric submarine. Unlike nuclear-powered vessels, diesel subs must surface or snorkel to recharge batteries. It had been on a mission to patrol Argentina's southern waters, monitoring illegal fishing activity and training exercises. Its last message, a brief report of water entering the snorkel, causing a short circuit and triggering a battery fire. It's what came next that haunts the ocean. Within hours of losing contact, international forces sprang into action. Search efforts included the US, UK, Brazil, Russia, and more over 18 countries deployed planes, ships, and submersibles in what became the largest undersea rescue attempt in decades. But it was too late. 9 days later, an international seismic organization detected an anomalous sound near the last known location of the San Juan. Not a whale call, not tectonic movement, an implosion. The data indicated a violent collapse consistent with a submarine hull breach at depth. The sound lasted only 40 milliseconds, but in that flash, 44 lives were lost. The official report said the pressure at that depth would have been enough to crush the vessel instantly. There would have been no time to suffer. But the pain on land, that's still unfolding. Families protested, demanded answers. Many insisted the crew had warned of mechanical issues long before the mission. Some even claimed the vessel wasn't seaworthy. Maintenance delays, budget cuts, a lack of spare parts. One widow told the press her husband feared a catastrophic failure weeks before they sailed. Historians still argue whether the Argentine Navy knew more than it revealed. And then came the politics. After the implosion report was shared, the Argentine government continued searching for the wreck for over a year under growing pressure. Private companies were hired. Funds were raised. Finally, on November 17, 2018, almost a full year later, the wreckage of the San Juan was located 3,000 feet below the surface, 500 kilometers off Argentina's coast. And what they found was devastating. The sub lay crushed and broken into multiple sections. The hull had imploded inward, leaving twisted metal, scattered debris, and a cone of destruction across the ocean floor. It wasn't a gentle resting place. It was violence fossilized in steel. But questions remained. Why was the sub allowed to depart with known battery issues? Why was the last contact, a report of water intrusion and fire, not treated as an immediate emergency? Why did it take a full year to find the wreck when data on the implosion's location was available within days? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, did the crew know? Did they suspect? Some reports suggest the captain and engineers had downplayed the initial battery fire, that it was contained, that they would continue the mission. Others argue they were ordered to press on despite knowing they were compromised. A fringe theory, less accepted but persistent, claims the San Juan may have been shadowing British naval activity near the Falkland Islands. That something went wrong in a covert standoff. But no evidence supports this. What is known? The San Juan's implosion occurred far from any enemy forces. No acoustic signals of warfare, no chase, no conflict. Just pressure, failure, and silence. You stare now at a reconstructed model of the wreck created from sonar scans and ROV footage. The images are grainy, but they tell a brutal story. The pressure at that depth didn't just crush the sub, it folded it like origami in reverse. There's something deeply human about that image. A vessel designed to shield life from the sea ends up shaped by it instead. Not in elegance, but in collapse. You picture the crew, a cook preparing a meal, a sonar officer checking screens, someone writing a letter home, then blackness, pressure, and silence. Many of the families still meet. They light candles, share stories. Some have turned to advocacy, pushing for better funding, more transparency, and an end to the culture of silence that sometimes surrounds naval tragedies. In Argentina, the ARA San Juan has become a symbol, not just of loss, but of neglect. As you move your sub slowly around the virtual renderings of the wreck, you can't help but compare it to the USS Scorpion. Different countries, different decades, same ocean in a way. Both were steel cocoons entrusted with lives. Both went silent. Both were found only after their stories had already ended. And yet the sea remembers. Pieces of the San Juan are still there, quietly rusting on the seafloor. And even now, no one can say with certainty what happened in those final minutes. Was there panic? Calm heroism? Probably all three. But here's what's certain: 44 crew members boarded that submarine, and not one came home. You let the lights dim a little. Let the hum of the sub fill the quiet. Some mysteries we solve, some we just learn to live with. Next, you're drifting towards something colder, yet no less haunting. It's not a submarine. It's not even a wreck. It's a ship that never truly sank, because it never stopped drifting. Welcome aboard the SS Beichimo, the Arctic ghost ship that haunted the seas for nearly 40 years without a single crew member on board. You've followed crushed submarines to their graves. Now you follow something that refused to die. There it is, peeking out through Arctic fog, its silhouette framed in icy stillness. No crew, no anchor, no signal, just an old freighter drifting through time. This is the SS Beichimo, and for nearly 4 decades it was the sea's strangest ghost. Built in 1914 in Sweden, the Beichimo began life as a humble cargo ship originally named Ånger Manelfen. By the 1920s, it was bought by the Hudson's Bay Company, renamed, and sent into the harsh waters of the Canadian Arctic to ferry fur and supplies between remote trading outposts. For years it battled ice storms and solitude. No one expected what would happen next. In October 1931, while returning from a delivery run, the Beichimo became trapped in early pack ice near Barrow, Alaska. The crew abandoned ship and built a nearby wooden shelter, assuming they'd wait out the freeze and return once the ice thawed. But then something strange. A sudden blizzard descended. Visibility dropped, and when it cleared, the ship was gone. Not sunk, not broken, gone. The crew assumed it had been crushed or dragged under. They were wrong. A few days later, Inuit hunters reported seeing the ship drifting intact 45 miles away. The crew tracked it down and briefly reboarded to retrieve valuables. But the damage to the hull and worsening conditions convinced them to leave it behind for good. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. The Beichimo didn't sink. It didn't stop. Over the next 38 years, it was spotted again, and again, and again. Historians still argue whether the Beichimo was truly abandoned or simply refused to cooperate. From 1931 to 1969, Arctic whalers, traders, and aircraft pilots reported sightings of the vessel, all without crew engine, off adrift in silence. Some claim to have boarded her, finding rotting cargo still in the holds, the interior frozen in time, like a ship trapped in its own last breath. Others merely saw her from a distance, a rusted hulk trailing mist like a forgotten thought. In 1933, a group of Inupiat reportedly entered the ship and took shelter during a blizzard. They lit a fire in the stove, found old blankets, and spent the night inside a vessel that hadn't been touched in 2 years. Imagine that. A ship long abandoned offering warmth one last time. But the Beichimo had more stories to tell. In 1939, she was sighted again near the Beaufort Sea. In 1962, another report, this time partially trapped in ice, yet still afloat. Each time someone approached, nature intervened. Ice broke, winds howled, and the ship vanished once more. She became known as the ghost ship of the Arctic, not because she was haunted by specters, but because she was the specter. The sea carried her like a memory that wouldn't dissolve. A lesson in stubbornness. A reminder that even the unwanted can linger longer than we expect. In 1969, nearly 40 years after her abandonment, she was seen for the last time, caught in pack ice off the Alaskan coast. This time, no one tried to board her. No one dared. And then, nothing. She disappeared. No wreckage has been found. No confirmed sink site. The HMO simply stopped showing up. And to this day, no one knows where she finally settled. Some believe she was crushed and now lies beneath the Arctic shelf. Others say she drifted further into polar waters, far beyond reach. And a few, they still look for her. The Alaskan government even launched a project in the 2000s called the Ghost Ship Search to locate the wreck. Satellites scanned the icy north. No trace. Gone. But the legacy lingers. Even now, sailors and pilots crossing the high north keep an eye on the horizon, just in case. And here's the wildest part. Bechimo wasn't the only Arctic ghost. Others have gone missing. Other ships have reappeared. But none with the same mystique. None with that eerie refusal to sink, that uncanny tendency to show up just long enough to be believed, and vanish before being explained. Some fringe theories suggest the ship was watched by currents, that she became caught in a perpetual gyre, a circular loop of Arctic flow that preserved her journey. Others whisper that the ship knew how to escape detection, that it had become more than metal, that it was aware. Romantic nonsense, maybe, but you can't help but notice how often those who got too close to her reported sudden storms, strange mechanical failures, inexplicable headaches. Coincidence? Perhaps. But let's not pretend the sea doesn't have its favorites. You move your sub slowly along what could be one of her old drift paths, imagining the deck slick with frost, the doors creaking with every icy gust, the captain's chair still upright in the wheelhouse, facing a horizon long since erased. And you realize there's something scarier than a sunken ship. It's a ship that refuses to die. That drifts forever, crewless, but not forgotten, a rusted beacon of stubbornness and stillness. You pause now just for a moment. The cold bites a little deeper here. You can almost hear the wind howling above, as if calling out for something long lost. But you're not done yet, because next, we dive into the most enduring legend of all, a city swallowed not by storm, but by myth. Prepare yourself for the submerged echoes of Atlantis, the lost civilization that haunts every depth and every imagination. You've followed the Bechimo through frostbitten fog and silence. Now you're diving deeper, not just beneath water, but beneath legend. What lies ahead isn't a ghost ship or a wrecked machine. It's a whole civilization, or so the story goes. This is Atlantis, perhaps the most famous city never found. A place that, depending on who you ask, was either an allegory, a utopia, or a lost technological marvel swallowed by the sea. And tonight, you're going there. Well, not there exactly, no GPS coordinates for this one. Just myths, maps that contradict themselves, and ruins that whisper possibilities. Let's rewind. Our earliest mention of Atlantis comes from Plato around 360 BCE. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, he describes a powerful naval empire beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. According to Plato, Atlantis was advanced, wealthy, and organized in concentric circles of land and sea. Oh, and they had hot and cold running water, aqueducts, temples plated in precious metals, war elephants. Sounds suspiciously like someone describing their dream civilization, right? Historians still argue whether Plato was recording history or writing metaphor. His purpose seemed to be a philosophical one, warning Athens about the dangers of arrogance and imperial overreach. Atlantis, in his telling, became corrupt and decadent, and the gods punished it by sinking it in a single cataclysmic day. So story or history? Over the centuries, many have chosen both. And here's where things get deliciously messy. People have claimed to find Atlantis in dozens of places. In the Azores, where submerged volcanic platforms seem to echo Plato's concentric rings. In Spain, near the Donana wetlands, where satellite scans show strange rectangular patterns beneath the mud. In Antarctica, as part of fringe theories that believe the continent was once ice-free and home to a lost civilization. Even in the Caribbean, where divers in the Bahamas have found strange stone formations known as the Bimini Road, straight-edged, megalithic-looking, and eerily precise. Mainstream archaeology remains skeptical. Most experts agree that no conclusive evidence links any of these locations to a sunken city. But the deeper we look under the ocean, the more we find things that don't quite belong. Ancient harbors where no civilization should have reached. Carved structures at depths far older than expected. And then there's the Richat structure, also called the Eye of the Sahara. Located in the desert of Mauritania, it's a massive circular formation visible from space with alternating rings of rock and sediment. Not underwater, but oddly reminiscent of Plato's concentric circles. Coincidence? Maybe? But let's not pretend coincidence doesn't wear a crown in this story. In 2018, researchers uncovered megalithic stone tools and structures on a submerged shelf off the coast of India, potentially over 9,000 years old. If true, that predates every known city on Earth. And raises the question, how much have we lost to the rising sea? Some fringe marine theorists believe Atlantis was a real place, swallowed not by punishment, but by the end of the last ice age, when melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise over 400 feet. That's enough to drown whole coastlines, entire cities, even civilizations that never had time to write their histories down. Others claim Atlantis isn't a single location, but a recurring pattern. Great civilizations that rise, peak, and vanish beneath waves or sand, remembered only as myth. And that's the most haunting part, isn't it? What if Atlantis isn't a where but a when? A moment when knowledge outpaced wisdom, when nature outpaced our walls, when cities we thought eternal weren't. You drift now along a reconstructed digital model of what Atlantis might have looked like: white stone buildings rising in geometric perfection, canals slicing through fertile gardens, towers etched with unreadable script. It's beautiful and eerily modern. You think of places like Santorini, where entire villages were buried by volcanic eruptions and only rediscovered centuries later. You think of Heraklion, an actual Egyptian city lost to the Mediterranean for 200 years before being found underwater in 2000, complete with statues, coins, and temples. And you begin to realize maybe we haven't found Atlantis because we've been looking for the wrong version of it. Not a sci-fi marvel, not a mythic utopia, but something quieter, a city that got unlucky. You reach now the final depth of this descent. The sonar is quiet, just ripples of silt and stone. No clear ruins, no throne rooms, just the absence of something big. And maybe that's the point. Atlantis is a placeholder for everything we know existed, but lost the evidence for. It's the memory of cities before cities, of builders who knew things we forgot, of people who looked at the sea and thought it would never win. But it always does. You turn your sub slowly, the lights catching on ridges that might have been walls or maybe just rock. And in that moment, you understand why the legend endures. Atlantis doesn't need to be found. It already found us. And it's not done whispering. Next, we'll visit something less debated, but no less miraculous: an actual underwater city, proven and mapped. And it's older than most of what you learned in history class. Get ready to walk through the streets of Pavlopetri, the sunken Bronze Age city of Greece. Atlantis may still dance just out of reach, but now you're gliding towards something real, something tangible, something confirmed. No need for Plato or sonar speculation. This isn't a myth. This is Pavlopetri, the oldest known submerged city in the world. Nestled just off the southern coast of Laconia, Greece, Pavlopetri sits beneath barely 4 meters of crystal clear water. If you didn't know it was there, you might think the dark outlines on the seafloor were just rocks or seaweed. But when viewed from above, especially during calm weather, it reveals a shockingly intact layout. Streets, courtyards, houses, even a central square. This isn't just a collection of ruins, it's an entire urban plan frozen in time. Pavlopetri dates back to at least 2000 BCE, with some parts possibly as old as 2800 BCE. That puts it squarely in the Bronze Age, meaning it's older than classical Greece, older than the Trojan War, and possibly older than written language in the region. You hover above the site, now your sub casting a faint glow on submerged stone foundations. The first thing that strikes you: the organization. The streets are narrow but structured. The homes feature multiple rooms, some with clear boundaries, suggesting use for storage, sleeping, or worship. There's even evidence of a sophisticated drainage system, yes, indoor plumbing, over 4,000 years ago. Historians still argue whether Pavlopetri was primarily a trading hub or a domestic settlement, but what's clear is that this was no primitive village. It was a city, and then, around 1000 BCE, it vanished. The exact cause: likely tectonic activity. Southern Greece is highly seismic, and it's believed that a combination of earthquakes and coastal subsidence gradually pulled the city beneath the waves. No great cataclysm, no explosion, just the slow, unstoppable hand of geology. And unlike Atlantis, this one didn't disappear from memory because it was forgotten. It disappeared because no one knew it was ever there, until 1967. That year, an oceanographer named Nicholas Fleming was diving off the coast of Elafonisos when he noticed something strange: stone walls, clearly man-made, lying in shallow waters. Later, a team from the University of Cambridge conducted a full survey, and what they found stunned them. The ruins were not only extensive, they were accurately preserved. For centuries, the site had remained relatively undisturbed, protected by the gentle sandy seabed and the shallow tides. In the decades since, advances in technology have transformed our understanding of Pavlopetri. Using underwater robotics, 3D sonar scanning, and photogrammetry, researchers have digitally recreated the entire city. You can now walk its streets virtually. Pause here. Let that sink in. You're walking through a city older than Rome, older than most pyramids. A place where children once played merchants, once traded, and priests once whispered to gods whose names we no longer speak. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. Artifacts recovered from the site include ceramic storage vessels, some of which held traces of oil wine and grain. This strongly suggests that Pavlopetri was a maritime trading center linked to a broader Aegean and Mediterranean network of commerce. And then, there's the layout so advanced that modern urban planners have studied it. The idea of zoning separating living quarters from commercial spaces was already in place here thousands of years before cities like Athens or Alexandria rose to prominence. And yet there's mystery too. There's no central temple, no palace, no grand structure to suggest a ruling elite. Was this an egalitarian society, or have those larger buildings simply crumbled beyond recognition? Fringe theorists have, of course, tried to link Pavlopetri to Atlantis. They point to its circular harbor, its sudden submersion, and its advanced infrastructure. But real mystery doesn't need mythology. Pavlopetri stands alone as a marvel, and yet despite its archaeological importance, it's at risk. The shallow waters that preserved the city for millennia are now its greatest danger. Increased boat traffic, illegal anchoring, and rising tides threaten to erode the very stones that make it special. And because it's visible just beneath the water, tourists often wade in unaware they're trampling on a 4,000-year-old home. In recent years, conservation efforts have ramped up. Greece has declared the site protected, and international collaborations have helped map and model the entire city to ensure it's preserved, if not in stone, then at least in digital memory. And here's something beautiful. In 2011, the BBC and the University of Nottingham created the first fully animated fly-through of Pavlopetri using sonar data. That digital model now lives online, a city of ghosts brought back to life by pixels and light. You hover now at the edge of a house. Through your screen, you can trace where a doorway once stood. You see a series of flat stones that once made up a courtyard, and in the center, something that looks suspiciously like a hearth. You imagine a family here, someone rising before dawn to bake bread, a child sleeping beside a low wall, a merchant calculating the value of his stored olive oil, and then, centuries later, waves washing silently overhead. It's humbling, and it's a reminder. Not every sunken city needs a dramatic ending. Sometimes the sea just wins slowly, gently, completely. You sit back now, the cabin of your sub softly vibrating. You've seen a mythical city that may never have existed. Now you've walked one that absolutely did. But what about the ones no one talks about? The wrecks that don't have names. The ruins that don't get documentaries. Next, you'll slip deeper into those silent places. Places filled not with cities, but with secrets. Prepare to explore the mysterious world of unidentified shipwrecks, forgotten vessels, anonymous cargo, and clues scattered like breadcrumbs across the ocean floor. You ease your sub forward. No bright sonar pings, no city walls, just shadows, drifting sediment, and the occasional glint of corroded metal. Welcome to the graveyard of the unnamed. These are the unidentified shipwrecks, hundreds, perhaps thousands of vessels lying at the bottom of the sea, their stories untold, their names lost to time. Unlike the Titanic or the Lusitania, these wrecks don't attract headlines. They don't have preserved passenger lists, famous last meals, or museum gift shops. They're just there, silent, shattered, unlabeled. And that's what makes them so unsettling. Historians still argue whether we've discovered even 20% of what lies at the bottom of the sea. Some say it's less. The ocean, after all, covers more than 70% of Earth's surface, and most of it remains unmapped. Every now and then, an oil company doing deep-sea exploration or a government scanning for strategic purposes stumbles upon something unexpected. A twisted hull, a pile of cannons, a wooden structure peeking out of the silt like the spine of some prehistoric beast. But there's no plaque, no flag, just rust and questions. Take the wreck in the Gulf of Mexico, discovered by NOAA's Okeanos Explorer in 2012. At a depth of 4,000 feet, the team found what appeared to be a 19th-century wooden ship. Its copper sheathing was still intact. Cannons were scattered around it. There were ceramic jars, bottles, navigational instruments, even a stove. Everything but a name, no registration number, no clear identifying feature. The ship is now referred to only as the Monterey Shipwreck, named after the nearby underwater basin. Was it a merchant ship, a military vessel, a pirate's prize? We don't know, and there are dozens more like it. The Baltic Sea is riddled with 17th and 18th century wrecks, many perfectly preserved thanks to the low salinity and frigid temperatures. Wooden hulls remain unrotted. Ropes still lie across decks. In some cases, human remains are still in their bunks. And yet, no logs, no flags, no records. Imagine being the captain of one of those ships. You chart your course, fight storms, navigate shoals, and then you vanish. Your ship becomes part of the scenery. Your name erased. There's a tragedy in that. But there's beauty too, because sometimes the wrecks themselves tell a story more vivid than any written record. A reef off the coast of Oman holds an unusual find, copper ingots stamped with Portuguese markings. Nearby, divers uncovered part of a rudder, a cannon, and Chinese porcelain shards. After years of study, archaeologists concluded the wreck was likely part of Vasco da Gama's fleet, a ship lost during his second voyage to India. But they can't be sure, because again, no name, just context clues. It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with 60% of the pieces missing and no box cover. And this isn't just about old ships either. There are modern wrecks down there too. Cargo ships that vanished in storms, fishing vessels sunk by rogue waves, smugglers' boats loaded with contraband abandoned and swallowed without a trace. Some were never reported missing. Some had no official paperwork at all. In 2003, deep-sea explorers discovered a relatively intact freighter 100 miles off the coast of Bermuda. Steel hull, rusted cranes, broken containers, no distress record, no known missing ship in the region that matched. To this day, it's still called the unnamed freighter. Just like that, a piece of the modern world became a ghost. And it begs the question how many of these ships weren't just forgotten, but deliberately erased. Smugglers, pirates, covert military operations, lost missions never meant to be found. Fringe theorists suggest that some of these wrecks are tied to secret cargo nuclear materials, biological samples, stolen art. One unconfirmed story tells of a Cold War-era Soviet trawler that sank with a miniature reactor on board, hidden beneath its fishing nets. The sea, as always, says nothing. You float now above one such wreck. The hull is twisted, the bow nearly snapped in half. But the frame is unmistakable. It was once proud. Functional. It carried lives. Now it's barely a skeleton. A school of fish flits through a ruptured cargo hold. An octopus has made a den in the curve of a metal porthole. Coral fingers creep across the deck. And this is the other side of the story. Shipwrecks, once symbols of loss, become ecosystems. In the Gulf of Thailand, divers found a sunken ferry from the 1970s. Today, it supports over 100 species of coral fish and marine invertebrates. It's no longer just a tomb, it's a reef. Nature doesn't judge our mistakes, it repurposes them. Still, there's something haunting about a ship with no story. No name to speak aloud, no descendants to remember. You find yourself wondering who last stood on this deck. Were they scared? Calm had they seen the storm coming? Or did it all end in a blink? Many wrecks are being documented now using underwater drones and AI-based mapping tools. The idea is to build an open-source digital database, a kind of library of the forgotten, but most will remain nameless. And that's okay. Because not every story needs a beginning to matter. Some just need an ending. You steer your sub away, letting the darkness reclaim the broken ribs of ships long past. The lights fade behind you, and silence returns. But not for long. Next, you're entering the realm of the oversized and the uncanny, where everything is just too big. Prepare to witness the phenomenon of deep-sea gigantism, where nature's creatures grow to jaw-dropping proportions, and the abyss doesn't just preserve life, it exaggerates it. You're leaving behind rusted hulls and forgotten names. Now you're entering a place where the laws of biology seem to stretch, where creatures defy proportions, and evolution whispers, "Go bigger." This is the world of deep-sea gigantism. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. In the crushing cold and pitch dark of the ocean's deepest layers, many species seem to get, well, weirdly huge, like nightmare fuel in IMAX huge. Take a giant isopod, for example. If you've ever seen a pillbug or roly-poly, you know what an isopod looks like, small, armored, and kind of cute. Now imagine one the size of a football, with segmented glossy armor and twitching antennae. That's a Bathynomus giganteus, and it can grow over 20 inches long. These deep-sea scavengers scuttle across the seabed at depths up to 7,000 feet, feeding on whatever falls from above. Whale carcasses, fish, even sunken boots. Why so big? That's still a mystery. Biologists suggest that in the deep sea, low temperatures, high pressure, and limited food availability may encourage gigantism as a survival strategy. A larger body conserves energy, better lives longer, and stores more oxygen. That sounds logical, until you see a giant amphipod, a transparent shrimp-like creature the size of a house cat, or a colossal squid whose eyes are the size of dinner plates and whose tentacles can wrestle a sperm whale. Historians still argue whether giant squid are exaggerated legends or real-life leviathans. But then came 2007. That year, a New Zealand fishing vessel hauled up a colossal squid, 494 pounds, nearly 15 feet long, with hooks on its tentacles and rotating suckers. Yes, rotating, like screwdrivers. The body was flash frozen and sent to the Museum of New Zealand, where it now rests in a massive tank. Scientists marveled at its beak, which could slice through flesh like a parrot's, and its eyes, which remain the largest ever recorded in the animal kingdom. Then, there's the Japanese spider crab. With a leg span reaching over 12 feet, it looks like something out of a sci-fi horror movie. These crabs can live over 100 years and are remarkably delicate, often losing limbs while molting. And the oarfish, an undulating ribbon of silver scales and crimson fins that can grow up to 36 feet long. For centuries, these rare sightings fueled sea serpent legends. Today, we know they're real, though sightings remain scarce. One washed ashore in California in 2013, causing a media frenzy. Marine biologists called it the stuff of legends. But not all giants are terrifying. Some are oddly elegant. The deep-sea jellyfish Stygiomedusa gigantea, which can have a bell over 3 feet wide and trailing arms 30 feet long, moves with slow, mesmerizing pulses. It's been spotted fewer than 120 times since it was first discovered in 1899. Or the giant tube worm found near hydrothermal vents. These creatures form colonies over 8 feet tall, feeding not on plants or prey, but on chemosynthetic bacteria inside their bodies. They don't even have mouths. You might ask, why is the deep sea home to such scale-bending anomalies? And the truth is, no one really knows. One theory, known as Bergmann's rule, suggests that animals in colder environments grow larger due to lower metabolic demands and greater heat retention. But deep-sea creatures also contend with immense pressure, darkness, and limited food. So, the better question might be, why do they thrive at all? And perhaps how many more giants are still undiscovered? In 2022, researchers using an ROV off the coast of Western Australia filmed a phantom jellyfish nearly 33 feet across, drifting silently through the inky black, its trailing arms rippling like banners in the current. It was only the 9th confirmed sighting of its kind. 9 sightings. Ever. Let that sink in. Now imagine what we haven't seen. The abyssal plains' vast, flat stretches of deep-sea floor are among the least explored environments on Earth. It's estimated that more than 80% of the ocean remains unmapped, let alone understood. That leaves plenty of room for new giants. Even modern submarines barely scratch the surface of the Hadal Zone, the deepest parts of the ocean below 20,000 feet. Who's to say what lives there? And who's to say it hasn't lived there longer than us? There's an eerie beauty to these creatures, their bodies shaped by pressure, patience, and total darkness. No need for speed, no need for eyes sometimes. Just the slow, silent logic of survival. You imagine drifting past one of these beings. Not a threat, not a monster. Just an entity too large to ignore, too old to bother with you. Your lights reflect off scales that shimmer like burnished steel. A giant eye, if it has one, glances your way without concern. You're not prey. You're just another anomaly in its eternal night. It continues on, coasting through currents it's followed for centuries. And you feel smaller than ever. Next, you'll meet a creature that doesn't tower in size, but thrives in decay. A thing that eats bones, dances on the dead, and turns tragedy into sustenance. Welcome to the world of zombie worms, nature's most morbid recyclers. You've seen giants glide like ancient gods through liquid blackness. But now you sink towards something humbler, smaller, stranger, and infinitely more macabre. Meet the zombie worms. Yes, that's their actual name. And yes, they live up to it. Scientifically known as Osedax, these pale, delicate creatures lack eyes, mouths, or stomachs. They float like crimson-tipped ghost flowers, gently swaying in the currents around a meal that would make most stomachs churn. Because what they eat is bones. Whale bones, to be precise. And they don't chew them. They dissolve them. Zombie worms were first discovered in 2002 when marine scientists exploring a whale carcass resting on the ocean floor noticed bizarre spaghetti-like growths protruding from the exposed bones. At first, they assumed it was a type of fungus, but it wasn't. It was a new kind of annelid worm, one that had evolved not only to live on death, but in it. Here's how it works. Female zombie worms attach themselves to bones using root-like structures that penetrate deep into the marrow. Inside those roots live symbiotic bacteria, which break down the fats and proteins hidden in the dense core. The worm absorbs the nutrients directly through its skin. No need for a digestive tract, no chewing, no swallowing. Just a slow, silent leaching of death's last calories. And the males, well, they've given up entirely. Historians still argue whether to even call them worms in the traditional sense. Male zombie worms are microscopic. Hundreds of them live inside the body of a single female, permanently embedded and reduced to little more than floating sacks of sperm. It's less a romantic relationship, more eternal servitude. Efficient, though. You hover now above what's known as a whale, fall a term for when a whale dies and sinks to the bottom, creating an entire ecosystem. One carcass can support dozens of species for decades, becoming a biological cathedral of decay. Zombie worms are often the last guests to arrive, showing up months or years after the larger scavengers have had their fill. By the time they take over, the flesh is gone. The blubber's been picked clean. All that remains are ribs, vertebrae, and a skull the size of a rowboat. And within that bone forest, a crimson bloom of Osedax worms fluttering in unseen currents, like tiny ghosts conducting the final rites. And it's not just whales. Scientists have tested zombie worms on other bones, cow bones, fish bones, even wooden dowels. While their preference is clearly whale marrow, they've shown adaptability. Which leads to a chilling question. How long have they been doing this? Fossil evidence suggests that bone-eating worms have been around since the Mesozoic era, meaning they may have feasted on marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs or plesiosaurs millions of years ago. Let that settle in. These worms might have witnessed the fall of the dinosaurs in their own quiet way. They didn't roar. They didn't run. They waited. And when extinction came, they cleaned up. In recent years, researchers have deployed experimental whale falls to better study these creatures. In 2013, a team sank a dead gray whale off the coast of California and monitored it with remotely operated vehicles. Within months, zombie worms had colonized it. No need for an invitation. One study even found over 15 distinct species of zombie worm, each adapted to a specific depth or bone type. Some prefer rib bones. Others favor the denser skull. It's a buffet of niche specialization. And yes, they've been found over 2 miles deep. They don't fear pressure. They don't need light. And they don't care how famous the whale was. They just digest the dead. There's something elegant about it in a morbid way. We often think of the deep sea as sterile, lifeless, bleak. But here, amid the ruins of giants, life thrives. In silence, in patience, in recycling. And if you zoom out, just a little zombie worms are a perfect symbol of the deep ocean. Not dramatic, not flashy, but essential. Because without them, and without other organisms like hagfish, bone-eating snails, and deep-sea crabs, dead matter would pile up on the ocean floor like an ever-growing graveyard. Instead, the sea cleanses itself. You think now of all the unseen whales drifting down through the miles, of the tiny red filaments fluttering on their bones, of the skeletons stripped and forgotten becoming part of the seabed. It's humbling, and more than a little eerie, but also deeply natural. Not everything in the sea glows or growls or gulps with sharp teeth. Some things just wait. You back your sub away from the bone patch, the lights glancing off silvery detritus suspended in the water like falling snow. And now you chase legend again. This time not whispers of a sunken city or theories from the Bronze Age. This next mystery is older than folklore, older than any shipwreck, and far harder to explain. It lives in sailors' stories, in blurry photos, in wide-eyed headlines. We're diving next into the elusive world of sea serpent sightings, those slithering silhouettes and writhing anomalies that still somehow defy scientific certainty. You've watched zombie worms feast in stillness. Now brace yourself, because the sea is about to move. You're drifting into a chapter that humanity hasn't fully closed, one that straddles the line between biology and folklore, hoax and possibility. This is the domain of sea serpent sightings. Yes, serpents. Not the kind with fangs and fire, but the long, undulating shapes that have haunted mariners' tales for centuries. It might sound like campfire myth, but the ocean has a long memory. And maybe, just maybe, we've been catching glimpses of something real all along. Let's start with the basics. For as long as people have ventured onto the sea, they've come back with stories. Often breathless, often unbelievable, always dripping with salt and fear. Ancient Norse sailors feared the Jörmungandr, a world-encircling sea serpent so large it could bite its own tail. Chinese legends speak of dragon-like sea creatures controlling storms, and in Japan, there's the Umibozu, a giant shadowy figure said to appear before a shipwreck. But not all stories are spiritual or symbolic. Some are strangely specific. Take the 1848 account from HMS Daedalus, a British Royal Navy ship traveling off the coast of West Africa. The captain and several officers reported seeing a creature nearly 60 feet long, with a mane like a horse's gliding just below the surface. It held its head several feet above water and swam against the current. They filed an official report, signed it, and were ridiculed for decades. Historians still argue whether they saw an oarfish, a misidentified whale, or something else entirely. But it wasn't an isolated incident. In 1905, two zoologists, E.G. Bullinger and Michael J. Nicole, reported seeing a sea creature while aboard the Valhalla near the South Atlantic. Their sketch resembled a massive eel or serpent, complete with a dorsal fin and vertical movements, unlike the side-to-side motion of a whale. Again, two trained scientists. No alcohol involved, no motivation to lie. Just one unforgettable moment. Skeptics point to misidentification. A group of porpoises swimming in a line. A basking shark's corpse grotesquely decomposed. A whale's penis. Yes, that's a real theory. But then there's the video footage. In 2016, a drone captured footage off the coast of Alaska showing a long serpentine creature undulating just beneath the surface. Experts claimed it was a rope caught in ice. Others weren't convinced. In 2019, fishermen off the coast of Norway filmed a similar sight, this time something darker, thicker, moving slowly but deliberately through shallow waters. The footage went viral. No solid conclusion was reached. Then there's the mystery of the Cadborosaurus, or Caddy for short. Said to haunt the waters off British Columbia, Caddy has been spotted by dozens of locals and fishermen since the early 1900s. Descriptions vary, but common traits include a long snake-like body, small flippers or fins, a horse-shaped head, a vertical undulating motion. One particularly strange case occurred in 1937, when a whaling station in Naden Harbor recovered what they believed to be a baby sea serpent from a whale's stomach. It was about 10 feet long, with a long neck, a camel-like head, and flipper-like limbs. They even took photographs. The body was reportedly sent to a museum, but somewhere along the way, it vanished. Only the photos and reports remain. Frustrating, right? Because sea serpent stories often follow a pattern: a sighting, a sketch or photo, a scientist weighing in skeptically, the trail going cold, yet the sightings continue. Modern-day sonar often picks up false positives, long-moving objects that don't match known marine life profiles. In some cases, these readings stretch 100+ feet, moving too fast or too erratically to be whales. And here's the kicker. We still don't know what lives in the ocean. More than 80% remains unexplored, and new species are discovered at an average rate of 2,000 per year. Most are small, yes, but size doesn't rule out rarity. Consider the megamouth shark. Discovered in 1976, it was completely unknown to science until a Navy ship accidentally snagged one off the coast of Hawaii. It grows over 16 feet long, has glowing lips, and a gaping filter-feeding mouth that looks almost cartoonish. Before 1976, zero evidence. Now we've recorded just over 100 sightings. Ever. Or take the giant squid. Once dismissed as sailor fantasy, it was only photographed alive in 2004 and filmed in 2012. Imagine how many serpents might exist in that same category, unseen but not impossible. Fringe theorists go further. They suggest that what we're calling sea serpents may be survivors of a forgotten epoch, descendants of mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, or other marine reptiles thought to have gone extinct in the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. That's a stretch, sure. But consider this. The coelacanth, a living fossil fish thought to have gone extinct 66 million years ago, was found alive off the coast of South Africa in 1938. It even made the cover of Time magazine. It's not a serpent, but it's proof. The sea doesn't care about our extinction timelines. You float now above a trench. The light from your sub fades just a few feet out. Something stirs just outside the range. A shimmer, a ripple. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe. Or maybe somewhere down here there's a creature that watches the lights of our subs, the way we watch shooting stars, brief, mysterious, and not meant to be understood. Sea serpents might never be proven, or they might already have been. We just didn't listen. But don't worry, we're not ending here. There's something even stranger ahead. Not a beast, not a city. Something eternal. Next, you'll meet the immortal jellyfish, a creature that defies the one truth we thought we all shared: the inevitability of death. You've watched giants drift, scavengers feast, and legends flicker on the waves. But what if the greatest deep-sea mystery isn't a monster, but a miracle? You're now approaching something that might be the closest thing on Earth to biological magic. A creature so small, so fragile, that it would be easy to overlook if it weren't for what it can do. Introducing the immortal jellyfish. Its scientific name is Turritopsis dohrnii. Discovered in the Mediterranean Sea, it's since been found in oceans all around the world. It measures just about 4.5 millimeters smaller than your pinky nail. But don't let that fool you, because this jellyfish has the power to reverse its own aging process. Yes, literally. It doesn't just age slowly. It doesn't just live long. When injured, stressed, or on the brink of death, Turritopsis pulls off a biological reboot. It reverts all its cells back to an earlier developmental stage, basically turning itself into a juvenile polyp again. It's the equivalent of a butterfly turning back into a caterpillar. And then, if conditions improve, it starts over. Same DNA, same little creature, just fresh. Biologists call it transdifferentiation, a cellular trick where one type of cell transforms into another. And it's extremely rare in the animal kingdom. In humans, this kind of transformation would be like turning your skin cells into liver cells, or reverting your entire body to infancy after a bad fall. Historians still argue whether the immortality of this jellyfish is true immortality. After all, they can still die from predation disease or environmental toxins. But barring those in theory, Turritopsis dohrnii could live forever. And in the lab, they've done it multiple times. Researchers first discovered the phenomenon in the 1990s, when they noticed their jellyfish samples meant to be studied and discarded were instead repopulating their tanks. Over and over again. Adult jellyfish collapsing into blobs of cells, then regrowing into youthful versions of themselves. It was like watching time in reverse. Cue the sci-fi headlines: the immortal jellyfish, nature's fountain of youth, the animal that refuses to die. And the hype. Some of it is earned. Because even though Turritopsis is fragile, easily eaten, easily disrupted, it challenges one of biology's core assumptions, that senescence. The gradual decline of the body with age is inevitable. This tiny being has no such limits. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Scientists are now studying the genes and mechanisms behind its regenerative abilities, hoping to understand how it controls cellular reprogramming. The implications for aging, cancer research, and tissue regeneration in humans are enormous. Imagine a world where we could trigger a similar response. Rewind our cells, regenerate damaged organs, prevent age-related decay. We're nowhere near that yet, but the jellyfish is a biological blueprint, a whisper of what might one day be possible. But there's another lesson here. Immortality doesn't come with flash or fame. The jellyfish doesn't dominate its ecosystem. It doesn't glow. It doesn't fight. It simply waits. It lets the current carry it. It retreats when necessary, regenerates, begins again. And this is oddly poetic, because in a world obsessed with power, permanence, and progress, this jellyfish wins by surrendering, by yielding, by becoming young again. You float now near a thermal vent, the water shimmering with minerals. Nearby, a colony of Turritopsis pulses slowly, nearly invisible. Their gelatinous bells catch the sub's light like bubbles of glass. They drift without urgency, without fear. One of them perhaps has already lived through a dozen life cycles, not as a clone, not as offspring, but as itself, over and over again. How do you even begin to measure a life like that? Does it remember its past cycles? Does it change even if its body resets? Or is it just existing endlessly in a loop? This is the mystery and the beauty. Unlike legends or shipwrecks, Turritopsis isn't unknown. It's known, and still it feels beyond comprehension. A quiet rebellion against the ticking of the biological clock. And it makes you wonder, what else is out there still undiscovered? How many other impossible organisms drift in the dark unnoticed? What if the deepest truth of the ocean isn't that it's filled with monsters, but that it holds miracles? You sit back in your sub, watching as the jellyfish pulses out of sight, and then something catches your attention. A shape, barely visible but alien, smooth shifting, gelatinous, moving slowly near a hydrothermal vent. Not a jellyfish, not anything familiar. Next up, gelatinous blobs. Near hydrothermal vents, the strangest life forms ever captured on camera, and the mystery of what we still can't classify. You drift now into the deepest hush of the abyss. The only sound is the soft hum of your sub, and even that feels intrusive, as though you're disturbing something that doesn't want to be known. The lights dim. The water grows dense. Around you, great plumes of mineral-rich fluid rise like ghostly smoke from hydrothermal vents, superheated jets belching out from cracks in Earth's crust, thousands of meters below the surface. This is where the planet exhales its secrets. And tonight, you're chasing one of the strangest, the gelatinous blobs found near hydrothermal vents. If that sounds vague, it is. Even the scientists call them blobs. That's not a technical term, it's a concession. These things defy classification, morphology, and in many cases logic. They don't resemble fish, coral mollusks, or jellyfish. They're not plankton. They aren't plant. They aren't clearly animal. And yet, there they are, hovering beside scalding plumes of 700 degrees out of water, surrounded by toxic minerals like hydrogen sulfide and methane, completely unfazed. Let's rewind a bit. In 2016, during an expedition along the coast of California, using NOAA's deep-sea ROV Nautilus, researchers spotted a purple orb on the seafloor, about the size of a tennis ball, smooth, glowing, unmoving. When they tried to grab it with the ROV's claw, it ruptured, revealing a soft folded inner structure. But even after collecting samples, scientists were stumped. It didn't fit into any known genus. They jokingly named it Blobus purplinis. Unofficial, of course, but accurate. Historians still argue whether this was a type of nudibranch, a sea slug, or something entirely new. The DNA sequencing wasn't conclusive, but here's the real kicker: it wasn't alone. In the years since, dozens of similar blobs have been spotted. Some are translucent. Others pulsate softly as though breathing. A few seem to respond to nearby light sources, not retreating, but shifting, twisting, in a way that suggests curiosity. One particularly chilling encounter happened in the Mariana Trench in 2019. A Japanese ROV exploring one of the trench's side canyons recorded footage of a gelatinous dome easily 4 feet across, hovering a few meters above the seafloor. Its edges were indistinct, like smoke inside a soap bubble. But at its core, something flickered. The footage lasted about 45 seconds before the object drifted out of frame. To this day, it remains unidentified. Some biologists think these blobs might be larval stages of deep-sea creatures we've never catalogued. Others speculate they're colonial organisms, like siphonophores, operating as a kind of hive intelligence. One fringe theory even suggests they could be a new form of life altogether, neither fully multicellular nor truly unicellular. A biological in-between. Which leads to a broader question. What qualifies something as life? Is it movement, structure, reproduction? Some of these blobs don't appear to eat, don't reproduce in any observable way. They don't fit into our nice labeled folders of taxonomy. But they exist, they react, they persist, and in a way they represent the final frontier not just of the sea, but of understanding. Because here's a secret. Most marine biologists will tell you quietly, for all our technology, we're still guessing. ROVs capture video, but often without samples. Pressure and temperature make physical retrieval nearly impossible. Many blobs disintegrate or liquefy when brought to the surface. Their chemical structures collapse outside the intense pressure of the deep, so all we're left with are videos, shapes, behaviors, mysteries. It's like being shown a glimpse of another world through a fogged window and then having the window slammed shut. Still, we try. Some deep-sea teams are experimenting with pressurized containers to retrieve samples intact. Others are deploying autonomous AI submersibles programmed to hover near vents for weeks at a time, recording movement patterns and thermal signatures. One such mission off the Galapagos detected repeated visits by a translucent blob that circled the vent at 6-hour intervals, almost like it had a rhythm. Was it feeding, sleeping, searching? We don't know, but it's hard not to feel watched when one of them floats past, the camera turns ever so slightly, and pauses. Some theorists, granted the speculative kind, suggest that blobs may operate on chemical logic instead of neurological, that they think through diffusion gradients, osmotic reactions, or electromagnetic pulses we don't detect. It's fringe, yes, but so is the fact that these creatures exist at all. You float now beside a vent, your sub's exterior groaning slightly under the pressure. The temperature outside is enough to melt lead, and just beyond your lights, something soft and shapeless glides into view. It doesn't dart, it doesn't flee, it just is. No eyes, no mouth, no limbs, just motion. You track it for a moment, and for that moment, it feels like the entire ocean has narrowed to this one featureless shape. A jelly, a slug, a new kingdom of life, or something that doesn't need to be named at all. And then it fades into the darkness, leaving behind nothing but the ripple of its passing and the feeling that you were not alone. It's humbling, really. We search the stars for alien life. We peer through telescopes, scan for signals, wait for contact. But maybe the aliens were here all along. They're just soft and slow and silent. Next, you'll descend one final time to the mystery that doesn't move, doesn't glow, and yet somehow draws perfect circles in the sand without hands, eyes, or reason. Prepare for the unexplained underwater circles, the ocean's quietest riddle. You've witnessed monsters, miracles, and mysteries. But now, near the end of your descent, things grow even stranger. Not because they're terrifying, but because they're perfect. You're gliding just a few feet above the ocean floor, thousands of feet deep, and it seems barren at first, just sediment-scattered shells, maybe a slow-moving crab. Then your light shifts, and there it is, a circle. Not just any circle, one that spans over 6 feet wide, made of concentric ridges and valleys, carefully arranged in geometric precision. Spirals twist at the edges. Fine grooves radiate like the spokes of a wheel. And at the very center, an untouched patch of sand, smooth as glass. There's no machinery, no current strong enough to shape it. No human diver ever ventured this deep. Just a perfect pattern etched into the seafloor. You found one of the unexplained underwater circles. The first of these circles was photographed off the coast of Amami Oshima Island in Japan in the mid-1990s. Divers stumbled across them around 80 feet below the surface, not far from coral reefs. They looked almost too good to be real, like undersea crop circles. At first, people thought it was a hoax, maybe someone dragging a weighted rake, or wave patterns. But the truth was far stranger, and somehow even more beautiful. It wasn't aliens. It was a tiny fish, specifically a small species of pufferfish, no larger than 5 inches long. And this fish, this humble little architect, was the artist behind the entire thing. Males would labor day and night for over a week, using only their fins to push smooth and sculpt the sand into intricate formations. Why? To attract a mate. That's right. These were not symbols, not warnings, not alien messages. They were love letters in the sand. Historians still argue whether this behavior evolved purely through sexual selection or serves another still unknown purpose. But here's what we do know. The circles are constructed entirely by males. They work tirelessly, often for 8-10 days straight. They even decorate the peaks with bits of shell or coral, like offering bouquets. And if they succeed in attracting a female, she'll inspect the design, choose her favorite lay eggs in the center, and then leave. The male stays to guard the nest. But here's where things get even more interesting. These circles aren't random. They follow precise mathematical ratios, patterns that mimic fractal geometry, logarithmic spirals, and even Fibonacci sequences, the kind you find in sunflowers or galaxies. Scientists analyzing the shapes discovered that the ridges channel water flow to help oxygenate the eggs. In other words, the fish isn't just showing off. He's engineering ventilation. This behavior went entirely unnoticed by science until high-definition cameras and long-term underwater observation became available. And now, we've found similar circles in other parts of the ocean, made by other pufferfish species, each with its own design language. Imagine that. Different underwater cities, different artists, different styles, and all of it for courtship. There's something profoundly human about it, isn't there? The effort, the art, the need to be chosen. Even in the crushing weight of the sea, even among cold-blooded vertebrates, beauty matters. But of course, not all underwater circles have been explained. In deeper waters far beyond the reach of most divers' ROVs have picked up larger, more complex formations etched into soft mud plains. Some span over 30 feet, with interlocking shapes and spiral pathways. No pufferfish could make those, and no current has been able to replicate them. One such discovery occurred in 2018 during a deep-sea survey off the coast of New Zealand. The ROV captured several massive rings arranged in a grid-like pattern across the seafloor. They weren't natural, but they weren't man-made either, at least not intentionally. No wreckage, no equipment, just perfect geometry in one of the world's least disturbed habitats. Were they formed by unknown creatures? Ancient anchor points. Some researchers have floated the idea of bioturbation, the disturbance of sediment by burrowing animals. But that usually leaves chaotic trails, not precision art. Others speculate about ancient human activity, now long buried and preserved by silt and isolation. There's no conclusion, only silence, and more circles. And as you hover over one, now watching grains of sand shimmer in your sub's light, a thought strikes you. Maybe the ocean isn't just about the unknown. Maybe it's about intention. Some mysteries roar, others drift. But these are whispered, etched in silence, gone in days, yet speaking volumes. You rise slowly now, leaving the circle behind, and for the first time in this journey, you feel a sense of completion. Not because you've seen everything, but because you've seen enough to know. The deep sea is not empty. It's alive, with history, with artistry, with riddles that may never be solved and maybe shouldn't be. It's a place where monsters are gentle and silence is sacred, where even the smallest life can create something timeless. You've reached the end of this voyage, but not the end of wonder. Now take a breath, let your thoughts drift, and ease gently into the wind down. You've resurfaced now, slowly rising from the pressure and quiet of the abyss. Above you, the water grows lighter, softer. The darkness peels back in layers, and with every foot ascended, the world becomes a little more familiar, yet not quite the same. Because you've seen things, not through textbooks or tidy documentaries, but through the silence that only the deep sea offers. The kind of silence that listens back. You remember the glow of creatures with no names, the sound of seismic whispers in the dark, the patient unraveling of myths. You floated beside the remains of vanished ships. You watched life rewrite the rules without asking permission. And now your breath slows, the engine hum fades, and somewhere behind your closed eyelids, the ocean stays with you. Maybe it's the gentle pulse of a jellyfish, or the perfect geometry of a circle carved by a fish with dreams. Maybe it's that strange feeling, the one that says the world is older, stranger, and more quietly alive than you ever imagined. Let it stay with you. Let the deep sea drift into your thoughts, like warm fog wrapping around the edges of your mind, softening everything sharp. You don't need to remember every detail. Just remember how it made you feel. Curious, humbled, small, but never alone. Now give yourself permission to sink not into water, but into sleep. Let the ocean carry you. Let the waves rock you like an ancient lullaby. And when you dream tonight, maybe you'll hear the ocean whispering back, "Sweet dreams."